But the Patriots march on, which sucks. Patriots have not been to the conference championship game since 2018. Poor Patriots fans. It's been so long. And then just a great football game in Chicago. Back and forth we go. Caleb Williams, man, that growth has been phenomenal. I think he shut a lot of people up during the course of his sophomore campaign in the NFL. Tremendous growth. If you're a Bears fan, the future is really bright. But Sean McVay's got his team back in the conference championship game. So we'll preview some NFL, look back on the weekend that was. The divisional round, for a lot of people, is their favorite weekend of NFL football as we move to the conference championship round next week. On Sunday at 1 o'clock, it is the Patriots and the Broncos in Denver at Mile High. Then it will be the Rams and the Seahawks. Lumen Field, Seattle, Washington. Seattle is going to be without Zach Charbonnet for the rest of the NFL postseason, so it'll be the Kenneth Walker show in the backfield. The Bills have elected to fire their coach, which I think was probably inevitable, and we'll get into it. Sean McDermott, after 9 seasons, is out in Buffalo, and what could be next there. So a lot to do. Busy show for you on this Monday afternoon. It is the NBA is going on right now, okay? So they do this every year, Martin Luther King Jr. Day, where they play a bunch of basketball throughout the course of the day. The Jazz and the Spurs actually tip off in about 50 minutes from right now, as do the Mavericks and the Knicks at Madison Square Garden. Thunder Cavs going on right now. The Thunder leads 76-63. The Clippers and the Wizards are at halftime. And there's a bunch of NBA all day today throughout the course of the night. So tonight, can flip back and forth through some NBA and some college football national championship. So fun day for sports today. We'll get you all the headlines you need to know. The All-Star starters have been announced in the West. And real quick, can we stop doing the whole Keontae George should be an All-Star thing? Please don't say that out loud. Keontae's been very good this year. Okay, but I see all these, and a lot of them are paid to propagate what the Jazz want them to. He's not an all-star, okay? And, the Jazz aren't serious about competing, and when you're not serious about competing, it's hard to get one all-star, let alone 2. If they were to get 1, it would probably be marketing, but they've won 14 games this year, okay? So if we could stop doing that, that would be great. But we'll get to some Jazz hoops. We are a month away from the start of the season for RSL. Utah Mammoth have been on fire as of late. Another great win for them over the weekend. All right, busy guest list, mostly college and pro football today, mostly. Going to bring in Jake Crane right off the top. We'll do some college football with Jake, preview Miami and Indiana tonight. We'll look back on the transfer portal now that the window is closed. Thor Nystrom will join us. Do some NFL with Thor. Jason Batacchio covers the Utes for the Salt Lake Tribune. We'll do some transfer portal. Shout out to the Running Utes. They got their first Big 12 win over the weekend against a pretty solid TCU team. BYU basketball lost their first Big 12 game over the weekend, and Utah State got 2. Zach Moss, of course, one of the best to ever do it at the U, former Utah running back. We'll do some college and pro football with Zach. And then during the 5 o'clock hour, we'll kind of have an extended crosstalk with our very own Sean O'Connell to preview tonight's game, the College Football National Championship between Indiana and Miami. Jake Crane, Thor Nystrom, Jason Batacchio, Zach Moss, Sean O'Connell, me, Spence Checketts, all of you, the great listeners. And that guy, Porter Larson, little NFL football this weekend. And I'm telling you, man, we're going to talk about this on the show. I am very curious to see what the splits look like for this game tonight. I just feel like the sports world has moved on to the NFL. I was watching a bunch of shows today, prepping for the show. Their A, B, and C block were all NFL breakdowns and previews, and then they got to the college football stuff like on the D portion of the show. I feel like everyone's moved on to the NFL. And
it's part of the calendar issue that we've talked about at length over the last couple of months. I mean, you have 2 weeks between games at a certain point during the college football playoff. You've got, right, the Army-Navy game is the sole game on a weekend after the regular season has essentially wrapped up. They're kind of doing it to themselves as far as that goes. Now, will they still get strong ratings and a bunch of people tuning in? Yes, it's a national championship game, but could they really knock it out of the park with a few simple adjustments? I think so. I think Yogi last week brought up the 24 team thing where you just play the playoffs in sync week to week rather than, these bowl games. And we can use the bowl games, of course, as the playoff markers, but it feels so weird to break up the calendar in the way in which they do, and then at certain points during the playoff have 2 weeks off, 10 days off, transfer portal in between, coaching changes in between. It's college football not understanding the TV show that they could have, and hopefully that they will have in a few years.
Yeah, I think we'll have to see what the numbers look like. But as we discussed, the ratings for the semifinals were down in the world of college football, and if they're creme de la creme, if they're best television show all year that they present to you, the national championship game is down 10%. I think we'll see a dramatic shift, and I think we'll see it pretty quickly. All right, Jake Crane's going to be our first guest today. Again, today's mostly college and pro football. We'll keep you up to date on the NBA stuff. And, of course, if any news comes our way while we're on air, we'll bring it to you. But before Jake stops by, on this Monday afternoon, courtesy of our good friends at Prize Picks, it is time now for your opening tip.
Welcome to The Drive with Spence Checketts on Utah's #1 sports talk. Now into the studios of ESPN 700 to set the scene for the show. The opening tip of The Drive is brought to you by Prize Picks. Use the code ESPN700 with Prize Picks.
Big game is almost here. The biggest of the biggest games. The big game is almost here, and there's no better way to cash in during America's biggest sporting event than Prize Picks, where it always feels good to be right. And since the big game is right around the corner, that also means it's your last chance to get into the football action before next season. So close the season out on the good note with Prize Picks by getting $50 instantly when you play your first $5. Find your community on Prize Picks. With a new social feeds feature, you can share Prize Picks with your friends and copy lineups from winners with a single click. You can copy lineups you like or use them as inspiration for your own picks. You can even follow Prize Picks partners like us and tail or fade our picks with just one click. Step number 1, download the Prize Picks app today. Use the promo code ESPN700 to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Promo code ESPN700 to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup, because on Prize Picks, it is good to be right. All right, college football says goodbye tonight for a number of months as we launch into the college football offseason. So we have the College Football National Championship game. I want to remind you, you can hear that game on this station. We'll say goodnight a little bit early to make space for Indiana and Miami at 5:30. We got a bunch of guests to kind of break this game down. The line over the past 24 hours has moved towards Miami. A lot of money has come in on Miami, not to win, but to cover. So as we sit here right now, the spread is Indiana is favored by 7.5, and the over-under has dropped 2 full points to 46.5. For any of you that wonder exactly what the hell I'm talking about, that means a lot of wise guy money, a lot of people that are betting on this game thinks Indiana's going to win, but it's going to be close and low scoring. That's ultimately what the money is telling us. So, as we've discussed all year long, Kirk Cignetti has put on a masterclass in a one-year turnaround for a school and an athletic department that primarily has been a basketball school. Indiana, of course, the Hoosier State, the basketball state. The basketball program has been down for quite some time, but historically speaking, this is a basketball school that now very much is a football school. Now, the game is being played in Miami, which ultimately would indicate a little bit of a home field advantage for Miami. But what we've learned about Indiana fans is they'll travel when they have a reason to. The data that I've read is Indiana, the University of Indiana, has more actively alive alums than any other school in America, which I didn't know that. And that includes Mark Cuban, who has written a very sizable check to keep this Kirk Cignetti train on the road. Miami is the only team all year to shut down Jeremiah Love. We forget that because it was a number of months ago, but they did beat Notre Dame. And if I would have told you after that Louisville loss when Carson Beck threw 4 picks, they're going to be playing for the national championship, I think you would have laughed and you would have been deservedly so. But they have run through 3 really good teams en route to this national championship game: Texas A&M, Ohio State, and Ole Miss. Of course, Ole Miss was without Lane Kiffin. But most people thought Ohio State was going to win another national championship. And I believe, if I remember correctly, when we entered the CFP window, Ohio State was your favorite. Now, Miami has done it with physicality up front. They've got 2 defensive ends that are going to be first-round NFL draft picks that are just impossible. So that's where it starts. The Akeem Mesidor kid and Reuben Bain, can they pressure Fernando Mendoza? Because Indiana's offensive line has been awesome. Mendoza gets a ton of credit, and he deserves it. But just like Utah football this year, Indiana's bread has been buttered with that offensive line that was rebuilt basically over 1 year. Now, Miami, throughout the course of their run, their winning streak and their 3-game streak in the CFP, they've been able to run it down everybody's throats. Carson Beck is a good quarterback. I don't really see like the people that are enamored with him. He has thrown for 14 touchdowns and 2 picks over this winning streak of theirs. But Mark Fletcher Jr. is Miami's running back, and he's about 6'4", 230. I mean, they line it up and they run it down your throat, and then they utilize that to get into some play action because Beck will kill you with some intermediate passes, but he doesn't really stretch the field at all. Now, Indiana, on the other side, enters this game historically special. They have one fumble all year long. It was the 18th play of the season. They haven't fumbled it since then. I was a little bit skeptical, and I'll admit doing the media thing where it's like, Indiana can't be good at football. What are you talking about? Indiana can't be good. And then when you start to lock in on him, because we watched Fernando Mendoza play quarterback out here at Cal, he just didn't look near the way he looks now. His growth has been incredible. They've got a couple of good running backs. The Roman Hemby kid has been awesome. So they can run it down your throat if they want to, but Mendoza is incredibly accurate. They protect him. They give him a ton of time. The Omar Cooper Jr. kid, he's got like 4 really, really good wide receivers. This is a complete football team. And I'm going to take Indiana, and I'm actually going to take the points. I think Indiana wins tonight, and I think it's going to be a 2-score victory. I think they're going to win by 10 or more. Now, if you're Miami, you got to run the football, you got to try to kill the clock, and you got to try to keep Mendoza off the field as much as you can. I just don't think they're going to be able to do it. I've been tremendously impressed. Kirk Cignetti, when he talks, reminds me of Nick Saban when he talks about the precision and execution. So college football says goodbye tonight for a number of different months, and I think Indiana's going to walk away as your national championship, but I also went 1-3 with my NFL picks over the weekend. So take it for what it's worth. All right, we'll catch a break. We're going to preview the game tonight, coming up with Jake Crane. We also have Thor Nystrom, Jason Batakiao, Zach Moss, and Sean O'Connell off and running. Monday Drive. Keep it here on ESPN 700. See the Dead with Jerry Garcia. But the Dead and Friends, they traveled through our market quite a bit. Bob Weir was a part of the. Did you ever see the Grateful Dead and Friends? They came out to the amphitheater a couple of times. It was surprisingly good. I never saw the Dead with Jerry Garcia, but I saw Bob Weir probably 3 or 4 times.
No, and I guess maybe it's something I should have done or maybe will do in the future. But I always, I listen to Garcia and the Dead for so much that it never really tickled me enough to get me there.
Yeah, passed away on the 10th. So a little Grateful Dead on a Monday. And it's a somber day because we're saying goodbye to college football. The final game of the college football season takes place tonight. You can hear it on our radio station. We're going to say goodnight early at about 5:30, Indiana, Miami. And we'll break it down with our next guest. Good to have Jake Crane back on the show on a Monday. Jake, happy Monday, man. How are you?
Oh, man, I appreciate y'all having me. Doing great. Ready for this game. And to your point, yeah, it is a little bittersweet, man. Last game of the year feels like we just started in week 0, even though that's not a real thing. But yeah, it's the truth is, does football season really ever end?
Oh, no, absolutely not, especially with the way the sport is not just covered but consumed. I mean, the storylines will continue, and even when the games aren't here to be played, there are a lot of topics to get to, and certainly here in our market, it has been a pretty chaotic month and a half, Jake. So before we get to the game tonight, I wonder how you've kind of consumed this storyline where Kyle Whittingham, after 21 years as the head coach of Utah football, steps down. And during the same time that news cycle is taking place, Sharon Moore loses the Michigan job in spectacular fashion. And now Kyle Whittingham's the head coach of Michigan. Kind of a wild carousel around here.
Yeah, I would love to know the true timeline of who knew what when,
Sure.
To be honest. Just from being in the business for over a decade in coaching. I mean, it's kind of like the military. We get like the stuff that's 20 years old that the military has new stuff. They just give it to the public. We're like, oh, my God, Google Maps. This is incredible. It just kind of feels like that. I just – and again, you guys are closer to it than I am. When Kyle Whittingham – stepped down at Utah, I felt like that was more of a retirement than it was, I just want to do a new chapter because of what he's built there and just, how kind of youthful he still is. It did surprise me a little bit. And I know Utah wasn't forcing him out, right? I assume I'm correct in thinking that. But I would just love to know because, we know what Sharon Moore did after this stuff came out, but it was obviously, people know, agents talk. Did kind of Whittingham know that this was a possibility to happen? That's what I'd like to know. But at the end of the day, I think Michigan got better, and I don't think it's the end of the world for Utah. It's just I would love to know the true timeline of who knew what when.
Yeah, we're all still in that space, and we're the flagship home of Utah football, and the studio's a mile away from the stadium, and I don't think anybody at this point knows the entire truth. I would say forced out is probably too strong, Jake, but not entirely incorrect. But ultimately, it does lead to this new era for Utah football under Morgan Scalley. And I think a lot of people are just excited about what Morgan can do. And my hope is people in this market will wish Kyle well after building this great program up for 21 years. I hope he does great things at Michigan.
Yeah, again, no controversies. Really the biggest controversy was, Cam Rising, the injury situation, which I think held Utah back at the end of the day. As sad as I was for Cam because it was out of his control, and he was a really good player. You felt like that hamstrung a couple of those years. But I do think a couple things about the change. One, after a while, and Kyle had a ton of success at Utah, there's no guarantees going forward, especially in the new space. I think after so much of the same thing or the same guy, change can be invigorating. It can be fun. And then, a guy like Morgan, which I don't think the identity of Utah from a physicality standpoint is going to change. And that's really how Utah elevated themselves. When you look at when they were in the Pac-12, and nobody talks about this, it amazes me that, it was Utah on the line of scrimmage and from a physicality standpoint that really bettered themselves, and they were able to elevate in the Pac-12. And then obviously the Pac-12 gets done. They're able to make that move and still be really successful. Kind of similar to the way that Ole Miss is elevated from a physicality standpoint in the line of scrimmage, especially in the front seven. to become a more complete football team that can win games in multiple ways. So I don't think the identity is going to change. I just think you got a new voice in there, and it's going to be interesting. And I wish them both all the best. And there's a world in which both sides can win out in this thing.
Yeah, and that's my hope, because I got to know Kyle really well, and Morgan's been a good friend for 25 years. So I'm wishing, maybe it's pie in the sky, but I'm hoping it works out for everybody. But of course, only time will tell. All right, let's get into, and everybody's talking about the calendar, and of course, Dan Lanning gave a quite a passionate speech, and I like Dan. I think more or less he hits things right on the head when he decides to be front facing with his opinions. And look, Jake, I'll just tell you from my experience, like today, I'm prepping for the show. I'm doing my routine. I'm watching a bunch of different shows. I'm listening to what I typically listen to. And college football, with its national championship game, was covered in like the C or the D block for most of the national stuff today, because today was about recapping the divisional round in the NFL and looking ahead to conference championships. The semifinal ratings were down. Okay, and so I'm going to be really curious. Look, there's probably still going to be, 18, 20 million people tuned in tonight. I don't know what the number is going to look like, but I'm curious to see if the audacity of college football to basically go head-to-head with the NFL is something that will hit them in the pocketbooks, because we know the only thing that will motivate them to change anything would be something like that. So just give me your thoughts on the calendar, where we find ourselves, and if you think we're going to adjust some things moving forward.
Well, I probably fall in line with most coaches and people out there who kind of understand really the way it works, in which our calendar is so screwed up. Why we don't start the season earlier is beyond me. I don't understand why we don't start spring earlier or convert them into OTAs. I know some places. I coached in Montana. I know some places you got to wait for it to warm up really before it's the most advantageous to go through spring. And I think in those cases you just got to kind of wait for them, and it's just part of it. But I don't understand why we don't start the season earlier, why we don't move things up, why we don't play our national title game earlier. I don't understand it. As far as looking at what we could do from a wholesome standpoint, if you increase the amount of teams in the playoff, you're going to increase the length of the season. And so if they're not going to scoot it up, this is only going to get worse. Like, you think it's bad now. Imagine if we were going to have to sit here and go through this after the NFC and AFC championship games and stuff like that. We can have a world in which both work out. And us playing the national title game on a Monday night is like having your engagement dinner at a McDonald's. What are we doing? Like, you got to go somewhere nice. This is a big deal. This is like the biggest deal. So it's counterintuitive and counterproductive to me. I will say I do think, as many people out there that are college football purists and would watch regardless, we didn't exactly have the biggest brands in the Final Four this year. So I think they're going to look at that and say, well, maybe it was more about the brands than it was about the timing, which, again, two things can be true at once. We have a problem with believing that in society nowadays. It could be that the brands weren't as big and the calendar is trash. Like, both those things are true. So I wish we just scooted up. We've talked with Tim Brando about this a million times. Scoot the season up. Nobody's going to be upset about it. And it would fix a lot of problems. But just like the way we select the teams that get in the playoff, for some reason, in the most beautiful sport and criteria of the sport in college, we have the stupidest way of going about the most important things.
Yeah, well said. And in the name of brands that maybe people are just not familiar with, I will admit to my own brand bias when people started talking about, hey, Indiana's pretty good, you should watch them. I'm like, what are you talking about? That's a basketball school. And then you start to kind of tune in a little bit and you understand just what an incredible job Kirk Cignetti has done in a masterclass and a really quick turnaround. My question, Jake, for you is, when did you, as a guy that has coached this game and knows this game, when did you start watching Indiana and going, okay, wait a second, this is for real?
Well, I put kind of a cap on them last year when I watched them, just because at the quarterback position, they were good. They weren't great, and I didn't think they were talented enough from a depth standpoint to be able to overcome that to win a national title. They were a legit team last year. They weren't an elite team. They were a legit team that had a cap when it came to what they could win. I'm from Lee County, Alabama. Everybody's a fan of somebody. I'm an Auburn fan. I'll tell you when I really started to sit up and say, wait a minute, this team could be a huge problem in 2026 is when I saw they got Mendoza to transfer there, because I watched Mendoza as a young player go into Jordan-Hare Stadium at Cal and rip them apart with 3 offensive linemen missing. And I watched him start that game 12 for 12. I watched him escape pressure from NFL edge guys and get away from it and make plays. I thought he was a huge upgrade from what they had at Rourke, and they were bringing back a lot of talent on that team, and I thought they added in spots on the line of scrimmage well through the portal. That's when I looked up, and then it came to fruition when I saw him out there, a guy that, the thing about Indiana is it's borderline sociopathic the way they go about it. And from a coaching standpoint, it's beautiful because it's not hard to get guys to go out and make a play when something bad happened. Like with my DBs, I never had to go over there and motivate them if they just got burnt for a touchdown to go out there and play better the next drive. It's what happens after something good happens, after you get a pick or we get a big stop and you've got to reset and go back out there and do it again. They don't get too high. They don't get too low. And because of that, they don't make many mistakes. I don't know if they feel anything. I watched Cignetti and the coaching staff during the games, and it's just like they feel nothing. They just love the process. It's like what Dexter from that show's dad wanted to turn him into. It's incredible. I bet they don't season their food.
From a coach's standpoint, because I agree with you, and also it's not just the maniacal way that they go about their execution. It's also the post-game commentary from players and coaches. Like they are so you had a military reference early on. It just feels like they're locked in, disciplined. Everybody knows the assignment, understands it, and just does their job. But the turnaround under Kirk Cignetti, Jake, as somebody who coached in this game, help us understand how he was able to do this so quickly.
Well, that's the interesting part. That's the most interesting part because I want to see if he can maintain it once he starts getting all these big-time players, these 4 and 5 stars, because the higher the star count, the higher the personality profile, that it's harder to get people to conform to the culture and identity that you have when you hit it right with some guys from JMU that knew you, that understood what you're about, and they turned out to be some pretty daggum good players, and you kind of did it with guys that got it out of the mud. Well, now once you upgrade the roster, and listen, nobody's turning down 5 stars. I can go ahead and tell you right now, that's why I laugh. People are like, oh, well, Cignetti, he just wants to do it without 5 stars. No, he doesn't. Look at who he just got out of the portal. Nobody ever turns down the 5 stars. So I want to see what it's like 3 or 4 years from now because he's still playing with a lot of the guys. You look at Pons, the JMU guys, Surratt, that are still huge parts of this and that are leaders. I think it was a combination of the availability for players to transfer at will so you can bring guys that were important to your culture. And then they've just done a great job of evaluating guys that fit their system, that play very efficient, and that's turned into the culture. So once you get this new, fresh set of guys in, and you hope that the guys that were younger, that are now older, that learned under the guys before, if you can maintain this level of discipline, this level of identity, you can do a lot of damage, especially when you start getting better wheels on the car.
Let me follow up with what you said about Mendoza, because, of course, we're out here formerly in Pac-12 country, rest in peace. I know it's still a thing, but it's not what it was.
It's not. It's not a thing. It's like SportsCenter. At the end of the day, it's different than it used to be. It's not the same thing to me.
Right. So, but my point is, I watched him at Cal, and I don't think I saw what you saw, but I'm not a coach. His ascension has been unbelievable as far as the improvement from the player that I saw out here and what we're seeing and what we'll see tonight. So tell me what you saw when you were watching him early on, and then as far as how he's improved, what stands out most to you?
Well, even on TV, his size, I still don't think people realize how big he is. Like this is a big guy. Like he's every bit of pretty much 6'5". Over what 225, 230, somewhere around there. Like this is not a Diego Pavia bite-sized baller. This is a fully grown human male that is in the upper tier of size at the position. That was the first thing that stood out to me. And then his ability to create in multiple ways. And as a defensive guy, this is what used to always scare me the most. Is he has the ability to make every throw, and that doesn't just mean you have a strong arm. Like the common misconception is, oh, that means he's got a strong arm. Well, it means a lot more than that. It's you're nuanced as a passer. I saw him throw the lollipop screen. I saw him pound the dig. I saw him float the post. I saw him drive the hole shot versus cover 2. And then I saw him be able to throw to both sides when he escaped. And then he's got what I call the Jameis giraffe run. And if you've ever had to tackle somebody, it's a lot harder to tackle guys that run funny. That's why guys that are bow-legged are tougher to tackle. They're faster, number one, but they run goofy, and it's hard to square them up. That's why you feel like Jameis Winston never got squared up. That's why you feel like Andrew Luck really never got squared up. Heck, even Matt Jones, to a certain extent, it's hard to tackle goofy, but just knowing how young he was and that he possessed that tool set, it's like watching them build a Home Depot. You know they're going to have the tools. It's just not fully ready for you to walk in there yet.
So where are they vulnerable? Because the thing that has stood out most to me after really, finally getting it, I will put my Indiana as a basketball school bias away and start watching this team. They have one fumble all year. It was the 18th play of the season. They're so clean and disciplined. It's not just the offense. Of course, the O-line has been rebuilt. They can run it if they want to. They've got a grip of weapons outside for Mendoza to throw to. But defensively, they're as good as almost anybody in the country as well. If you're Mario Cristobal and you're watching tape, what are you seeing? Like, okay, maybe we can do this to exploit that, if that makes sense.
Well, I mean, I hope maybe you can put Visine in their pregame meal at this point. I don't know if there's, like a wedding crashers dinner situation. I don't know what else. People have talked about the size advantage of Miami's offensive line to their defensive line, and losing, the Handley kid, I believe is his name, up front. I think they're going to feel that one a little bit more in this game because Miami's not just big; they're big and mobile. But they do such a good job of, if they feel like they're outbased or outsized on the defensive line, they're able to run, stunt, and move and do things to create negative plays without getting hurt too badly. Because a run stunt is like a blitz in which you're being aggressive, but you're also taking a risk because you're losing players on certain levels, and it creates gaps naturally sometimes if you don't get there that could lead to explosive plays. But they tackle so well in the secondary and they run so much zone, it's difficult that when you do hit them, it's like for 8 to 10. It's not for 40 or 50. So they make you kind of methodically, even if you have an advantage, work down the field. And it's hard to go 9, 10, 11 plays consistently. So, again, Miami could play well and Indiana play well, and Miami could find a way to win this game. But as far as finding some singular area where Indiana is weak or vulnerable, they're not bad at anything. They're just pretty good at everything, and including not beating themselves. And in this sport, it's a true thing that most teams lose games, they don't win them. Indiana makes you beat them, and if they're playing well, it's hard to do that in general or anyways, but even if they're not playing well, their style of play, their level of efficiency still makes you have to play close to clean or perfect football. And that just the law of averages is it makes them tough to beat.
Moving over to more of a vacuum coverage of Miami specifically, the Louisville loss, Beck throws 4 picks. They're really the only team all year to shut down Jeremiah Love. It just feels like that was 18 years ago when they beat Notre Dame. But I'll kind of ask you the same question. Was there a point this year where you were watching them thinking, okay, they've got a little something, maybe we'll see them, playing for the, a chance to go to the CFP? Or did you envision that they were actually going to be a team that could be on this stage?
It shocked me. I'm not going to sit here and lie. I've watched pretty much every Miami game during the regular season and knew they did some good things. And it was the typical things that a Mario Cristobal team does. They're physical up front. They're going to be downhill. They're going to be able to run the ball with sets-up play action. But they were still so mistake-prone. And it's not just Mario's clock management. It's Miami, and you saw it a little bit against Ole Miss. If a game doesn't go a certain way, they can lose it themselves. They can penalize themselves. They can turn the ball over in important spots. And as much chaos as they're able to cause with their pass rush and with their heavy hands up front, that they can step on a landmine themselves. So I thought, the A&M game, it was really impressive. I know it was really windy, but watching their ability up front in the front seven to do what they did to A&M and corral Marcel Reed the way they did, especially after he kind of hurt him with his legs on the first drive, that was impressive to me. But what they did to Ohio State obviously makes you look up and go, okay, if this team plays well, they can win any game they play in with the players at the spots they have.
All right, let's move over to how you think tonight's going to go. There's been some late money going towards Miami, so that has brought the line down to 7.5. Indiana, as we sit here right now, is a 7.5 point favorite. Over-under has also come down to 46.5, so money is going towards Indiana winning, but it being closer than most people think and maybe a little bit more low scoring. What's your take on this, Jake?
Well, I thought when it came out at 48.5 that the under on the total was the best bet on the board. It's just with the way that Indiana is playing, and I understand it's more than a touchdown, which is a lot of points in a national title game. I've just watched these robots play like this for so long. I don't think they can't not play like it. And again, that doesn't mean that Miami can't make plays or Miami can't keep it close or even win the game. I'm just not betting against a team that doesn't listen to music. They just listen to machines making noise before the game. I'm not going to do it. My inclination is that Miami is going to try and actually limit the possessions that Indiana has with Miami's run game. And I'm guessing that Shannon Dawson won't get too cute, even if the run game's working like he did at times against Ole Miss, and we've seen with the trick plays in the past, which is why I like the under. I think Miami may try and take the air out of this and put some true game pressure on Indiana in the playoffs in the second half, which they just haven't had.
All right, Jake, before I set you loose, one more question just about this format and what you think could be next. There's the reports that they're still deadlocked on CFP expansion. A lot of people believe it should be expanded. A lot of people like it like this. Some people never wanted it to expand in the first place. How do you think when the dust settles, this format will be changed, if at all? And then attendant to the question is, do you have a preference as far as what you would like to see?
Yeah, I think they're going to go to 16. I think that's going to happen. And if, the money's right, they're going to keep expanding it, which I wanted 8 teams. I thought 8 teams was the right number for a playoff when we first started talking about this. But here's the craziest thing. That's not the biggest problem we have. We have like an existential problem on how we pick the teams. Like the fact that, and listen, I don't think the G5 should be excluded, but the fact we have 2 group of 5 teams in the 12-team college football playoff is insane. That's insane. I don't that'd be like if we let, like Guatemala join the Allies during World War II. Like, we need bigger team. We need a bigger team than that. Like, what are we doing? I don't understand why we don't just take, what I think we should do is take the top 14 teams. I don't care what conference they're in, whatever, no automatic bids. The top 14 teams, you have 11 play 14, 12 play 13. The winner of those games become the final 2, and we run this tournament out. But the biggest problem is the way we select the teams. Until we fix that, it can be 2 teams, it can be 8 teams. It's like somebody gets in a car wreck, and they've got a broken arm and 2 collapsed lungs, and you go work on the broken arm first.
Hey, good stuff, man. Appreciate the time. Enjoy the game tonight. Love to get you back soon, okay?
Hey, just let me know, guys. Appreciate y'all having me. Hope everybody enjoys it, even though it's on a Monday. Sorry.
There you go. Jake Crane, host of the Crane and Cone Show. You can find his work on social media at Jake Crane _. They're with their friends on On3 now. They do a lot of transfer portal rankings. And speaking of transfer portal rankings, now that the portal is closed, we will tell you what On3 had to say about Utah's class and BYU's class a little bit later on. All right, I want to tell you about my friends at Advanced Window Products. This is our guy, Nate Orchard, Utah's the mayor of Sac Lake City, the all-time single-season sack leader for the Utes. And he runs Utah's #1 window replacement company with his buddy Jake Weber, good friends of the show. You can get $2,500 off when you buy 10 windows or more. Just call Advanced Window Products right now at 801-850-9100 or visit advancedwindows.com. Don't miss out on $2,500 off when you buy 10 windows or more. Give the mayor a call today at 801-850-9100. You will not regret it. Advanced Window Products, building, installing, and guaranteeing the best windows in Utah. All All right, we'll do a little NFL coming up on the other side. Thor Nystrom will stop by. We'll do some Utah football and basketball with Jason Patacchio. Our guy Zach Moss joins us, and then Sean O'Connell will stop by for our final segment today to preview tonight's national championship game between Indiana and Miami. 1 hour down, 3 hours to go. Keep it here on a Monday on ESPN 700. About 2 hours and 25 minutes to be exact away from kick tonight. College football says goodbye as we enter the offseason following Indiana and Miami. You can hear that game on our radio station. We'll preview it with Sean O'Connell during the 5 o'clock hour. Then we'll say goodnight a little early to make way for that game. Let's talk more football with our next guest, one of our favorites back on the program. It's Thor Nystrom. Thor, what's up, man? How are you?
I'm doing great. How you doing?
I'm well. So I do want to do some NFL with you but before we get there, Indiana has been a remarkable story for a basketball school to have this turnaround that's really taken place in just a matter of a year or two. What stands out most about the job Kirk Cignetti has done, and do you feel like they're going to get it done tonight?
I do think they're going to get it done tonight, Indiana, but it is a wild story. Like you said, in 2 years, you build up this juggernaut that now is more than a touchdown favorite in a national title game in the city of the opponent. To say that we've never seen anything like we're going to see tonight would be an understatement in this sport or any other. What Cignetti's done is it's impossible. It's kind of cool. This is by far the most expensive national title ticket as well to get in the door. $4,000. This game being in Miami and all the Indiana fan base going down there. And of course, you also have Indiana's quarterback, Fernando Mendoza, the Heisman winner, the presumptive number 1 overall pick coming here in April, who went to Columbus High in Miami in the shadow of the Miami Hurricane Stadium, rooting for Miami as a kid. Miami was not interested in Fernando Mendoza coming out of high school. It's the reason he went to Cal. And then Miami in the transfer portal last offseason ended up giving more money to Carson Beck than they were offering to Fernando Mendoza. Now, of course, it's going to be Beck against Mendoza in this national title game tonight in Miami. I can't wait for it.
Let me follow up with a question about Fernando Mendoza, who, as you said, appears to be the odds-on favorite to go to the Raiders to play quarterback for them next year. We had him out in this region, old school Pac-12 days when he was at Cal, and we were talking about this earlier. You could see that there was some arm talent, but, dude, I didn't see this coming at all. As far as his improvement, what stands out most to you, and then what kind of NFL player do you think he's going to be?
It was really hard to evaluate Fernando Mendoza the time that he had started at Cal because Cal's offensive line was such a travesty the last couple of years, and you would have immediate pressure. Their whole offensive system, they designed it around that leaky offensive line. And what they ended up doing, it was a really quick hit passing game outside of the tackles, a lot of short stuff right after the snap, again, to work around that. Fernando Mendoza's pressure to sack ratio in that environment last year was 26.1. But again, it was hard to blame it, which is super elevated. But it was hard to blame him for that again if you watch the games. Then he goes to Indiana. Like you mentioned, you could see the arm talent, but it was just flashes of it because so rarely did he get to be back in the pocket for 2.5 seconds or more before someone was going to crash into him. But we had seen some flashes of it, and this is a great example of the scouting process of Kirk Cignetti, the Indiana coach. It's kind of famous now. He has like an easy chair in his living room at home, and he says he scouts every single guy, watches every single tape of every prospective recruit on his laptop or his tablet or whatever, sitting on that easy chair in his living room. And he obviously got it right with Fernando Mendoza, as he's gotten it right with so many guys through that process. And that's a big part of the reason why Indiana's here right now.
So the money that's come in on this game as of late has gone towards Miami. Indiana's still a healthy favorite. But as we sit here right now, Indiana's favored by 7.5, and the over-under has gone down to 46.5. So the over-under has gone down 2 points, and the spread has gone the way of Miami, indicating that the money is telling us a lot of people believe that Indiana will win, but it will be closer than most people expect, and it will be a little bit less as far as a shootout, kind of a low-scoring game. Tell me, Thor, what you're expecting tonight when these two teams do battle.
Yeah, it's not a surprise that the sharp money comes in late on Miami here. If you just go through what is typically sort of a sharp thought process approaching a handicap, you can see why here. In this game, Miami against Indiana, if you were to have put these two teams, even on a neutral field, let's say early October, Miami would have been favored in that thing by at least 4.5 points. And if it was in Miami, I think you're looking at touchdown or maybe even this exact same spread, only the other team is favored, Miami favored. Obviously, Indiana has proven to be sort of a juggernaut and a colossus here as we've gone on and gone through the CFP. The last game, they just decked Oregon. Almost Oregon's getting off the bus, and Indiana's already ahead 7-0 in that game, and it was just a boulder. And so, of course, the public's expecting them to hold serve and to annihilate Miami here. But just a lot of times sharp bettors are just value shoppers. You know, you're betting numbers, you're not betting the teams. And I think that's what the idea is here is this line has shifted. You could think about it theoretically, almost 2 touchdowns in the course of a couple months. So we're going to buy low on the team playing the national championship at home here with Miami and try to bargain shop there. For me, the best bet in this game, it's the under. And it's not a surprise to me as well that the sharp money has come flowing in here on the under late in the week. Miami is a team that always wants to play rock fights. You know, you saw the game against A&M is a perfect encapsulation of Miami, the first round of the CFP, where it was 3-3 with 3 minutes left, and then Mark Fletcher rips off a long run. Miami scores at the very end, wins that game 10-3. They like to play rock fights. Their superpower, it's their front seven. And on offense, when they have the game script, the one that they want, neutral game script or a positive game script for them, they're going to play super conservative on offense, right? It's just grinding with Fletcher, grinding with Shamar Brown, and then the quick-hitting passing game. You don't see things get away from Miami unless they need to get pulled out of that offensive game script and get more aggressive. That's where you start to see the interceptions with Beck. But in this game, they should, at least through the first half, be able to keep this thing closer, keep it in their more methodical range that they prefer. Indiana, you look at them, offensively, they play at a slow tempo too. And so if they can't get that boulder going right away, like they did against Oregon, for instance, and make Miami chase right from the start, I think that's where you see more of the methodical, lower scoring game kind of playing out here. So for me, it's the under. It's the Indiana money line as well. I would lean towards laying the points with Indiana, but that's where you get into the tough thing of if you only expect 40 total points in this game to be scored or in the high 30s, are you able to lay 7.5, knowing that means Indiana almost assuredly has to win by double digits in a low-scoring game for you to cover? So that's sort of where it's a little bit of a bridge too far for some folks to lay the points.
A lot of people talking today about the calendar, and we're among those people, Thor, as a result of the semifinals in college football. The ratings were down, and a lot of people have simply moved on to the NFL. A lot of the shows I was watching earlier today or stuff I was listening to prepare for the show, the college football national championship game was on the C block or the D block. A and B all allocated looking back on the NFL and then looking ahead to the conference championships game coming up on Sunday of this week. Now, the only thing that will motivate anybody in college football to change anything is if they're hitting the pocketbooks. And I don't know what the ratings are going to be like. My guess is anybody that tries to go head-to-head against the NFL is going to lose. Now, there's no NFL game tonight, but how many people, if you're not doing this for a living like you and I, or you're just a single degenerate with nothing else to do, how many people can allocate 12 hours over the course of 3 days to watching football? Do you view this as a problem for college football? And if so, do you think we're going to see a change to this calendar?
The bad news is, yes, this is a big problem for college football. The good news, though, I think that there's a pretty easy solution to this. And we see this a lot of times at the NCAA where they think they're the smartest people in the room. And so they often come up with the most convoluted, confusing solutions to problems, which just add more problems. What you should try to do here, if I was college football commissioner, it'd be very simple. When do we want to end the season? Well, we have, 70, 80 years of data prior to this, that the time when the viewing public wanted the season ended, it was right around January 1st, right? You think back to when you were a kid, the January 1st bowl games, and then you get done with that. It's a day of celebration for college football. Then you move to the NFL, right? And if you were able to set up this schedule where the college football championship game fell somewhere around that January 1st date, so everything sort of leading up to that, it would also be much better with the portal, right? They wanted the single portal thing, and they wanted it to be done. It was late last week was when that thing closed, because you have to do it before the spring semester starts at these schools. If you could get the whole college football playoff done by, let's say, the first week of January, then you do the portal window right after that. people can get enrolled in their classes and everything at the new schools, and it's not a competitive disadvantage for the teams in the CFP. I think that's the best solution here, and it's pretty easy. They throw away December for reasons unknown. You always have multiple bye weeks in there until you start getting into the bowl season. Do away with that. Get right into it. I would also advocate do away with the conference title games. They don't mean anything anymore. They used to, but they don't anymore. And now you have the thing set up where some teams don't want to play in it. Either they're a lock to get into the CFP or they feel like they should be a lock to get into the CFP, Alabama being an example this year. You could do away with all that if you just take that away, and then that gives us one more week as well. My solution to this is you start the CFP right after the regular season, and I'm talking the next week. So the first week of December, let's expand this thing to 16 teams, and every weekend in December you have another round. Get the national championship done around January 1st, and you're good to go.
I like that. I like that, and it's probably too logical for the sport to actually consider because of all of the things that it feels like most people. Like they need, whether it's either a commissioner or like a VP of common sense, because it doesn't feel like it's really that hard. But let me expand the conversation to just the current state. It's been an interesting Thor news cycle out here in Salt Lake, where after 21 years, Kyle Whittingham is now the head coach of Michigan, which is still a weird sentence to say out loud. And the transition has been made to Morgan Scalley, and Coach Witt took 5 really good players with him and a bunch of coaches with him as well. That has, caused a little bit of a ripple effect around here. And, I, for one, will always wish Kyle well and always will be a fan of his for what he built for my alma mater. And I've known Morgan 25 years, and I believe he's the right guy for the job. But since you cover this for people out here in Salt Lake City, when it comes to the magnitude of the pressure behind simply the job titles, now you're the head coach of Michigan football. What sort of dynamic does that bring into play for Witt? I mean, you go 5-7 like he did out here for 2 years, you probably lose that job.
100%, yeah, and I do think it's the perfect hire for Michigan. You get a man with integrity to replace the man devoid of it that you had previously hired, and trying to sort of turn that thing around. That part of it I get, and I get why Whittingham wanted that sort of challenge. I think I'm with you guys, though, where my sort of initial, reflex on the thing was, why are you going to walk away from a good situation at Utah and the legacy that you built there in order to take the Johnny-come-lately blue blood job that had just opened up? If you're going to walk away into the sunset was sort of my idea with that. Obviously, he had different ideas, and you could argue it the other way. It was brought up to me on a show earlier today of, Mike Tomlin walks away from Pittsburgh, and now with the Bills job open and with the Ravens job open, like, should Tomlin end up, would he listen to that? And you're like, well, he walked away from his job, so he's probably going to take the year off or whatever. But you bring it back to the Whittingham thing, and if there was, if there's a rip there, it was just time to move on. You sort of get it, because nowadays, whether it's schools, whether it's NFL teams, the ubiquity of firing coaches, the coaches should have some level of say here as well. So on that thing, it's hard to argue against Whittingham. But I guess to answer your question, I see it both ways. But if I was a Utah fan, I probably wouldn't.
What's the better job right now, Baltimore or Buffalo?
Oh, gosh. I would probably say Buffalo, but that one's really close. Who would you say? That's a close one.
I'd probably say Buffalo, but I've got a blind spot for Josh, and I just think Lamar's awesome, but he's aging a little bit in the history of this league when these athletic quarterbacks, respectfully, because he's still really special, but as they age, like I thought Lamar was different this year, and as he ages, will he be able to continue the style that's brought him success? And I just, Josh played his college ball in our region at Wyoming, and I think the world of him. So I would take the Buffalo job. That's just me.
I think I would too, yeah. And shout out Craig Bull.
For sure.
Josh Allen, Wyoming Cowboys, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's move over to the NFL before I set you loose, because as I referenced, really it's the sport that moves the needle unlike any other. So even though we're sitting here with the college football national championship tonight, a lot of people want to discuss what's happened over the weekend. And since we were just talking about the coaching shuffle as a result of what happened on Saturday, Bills Broncos, I'm going to let you take a stab at whatever portion of that chaotic game that you want to take a stab at. Unfortunately, a lot of Broncos fans in Salt Lake feel bad that they're on the precipice of a Super Bowl without their starting quarterback. But what did you make of Denver getting that done in overtime?
That was a wild game, and obviously you credit the Broncos for being able to overcome there. You felt bad for Allen, but then again, Allen, there's a couple plays there. It's like, bro, what are you doing? And I know that he felt, you have a lot of pressure there because you have to go in and kind of raise up the bar of everyone and win that game by yourself. But, like, for instance, the scrambling around, holding the ball out to the right side like it's a loaf of bread and, allowing Benito to swipe it out or some different stuff like that. But you have to give a lot of credit to the Broncos there. I thought it was such a clever game plan that they had, overcoming their limitations, putting the players in the best spot to succeed. They were just sort of paper cutting the Bills over and over again, and then they weren't making the mistakes that the Bills did. And then, of course, you get the unfortunate news right after the game that Bo Nix is injured, which is pretty fascinating here thinking about the last two rounds of this thing. But, yeah, devastating game for the Bills, and obviously it led to sort of the knee-jerk reaction right after that of getting McDermott out.
Let's move to the Saturday night. And look, we don't need to spend a ton of time. Obviously, San Fran, no Warner, no Bosa, no Kittle, and I could keep going, as you know. I did not see a dismantling like that coming, but I think most people thought Seattle would win the game, and a lot of people believe Seattle will win the Super Bowl. Their defense is nasty, and the Darnold injury didn't appear to really cost them all that much when it came to the way they just smoked San Fran. But give me some takeaways. Seattle 41, San Francisco 6.
Yeah, the Seahawks, it's kind of like the Indiana thing we were talking about with college football, where if you let them early, you let them get on top of you really quick, it becomes the boulder going downhill. And you knew in that game in the first quarter that the thing was over. You leave the first quarter, you're down 17-0 to the Seahawks. Night. You can already start booking your trips to Cancun. You have the number one defense in the NFL with the Seahawks, and then depending on what metric you look at, either the best special teams unit or the second best special teams unit in the NFL, and then their offense, they can move the ball multiple ways. That's not the strength of the team, but if the other two things are firing on all cylinders, you just have to avoid mistakes, basically. And that's what they ended up doing. The 49ers, man, just limping there to the down the stretch there with all the injuries that they had. You really start to wonder about that conspiracy theory with that power plant or whatever it is right next to the San Francisco Stadium, with how many injuries they have. Even Tonjes, the guy who's playing for Kittle, then he comes up limp during that game. You just see it over and over again. So that theory is starting to turn me into a conspiracy theorist just because of how divergent the 49ers injuries, especially with ligaments that they've been since the time that they've moved to Levi Stadium from the other 31 teams in the NFL. But, yeah, kudos to the Seahawks. They built that thing the right way. They built it up really quick. It has some stylistic similarities to the Michigan title team in 2023 as well. And there's guys on that staff, of course, several of them from that Michigan team, but where it was led by the dominant defense, you had an awesome special teams, then you had an offense that was multiple. It's really, really hard to beat a team like that because they don't make mistakes.
Moving over to Sunday's action, and that, when it comes to a wild back and forth nature, the Patriots-Texans game, turnover after turnover after turnover. It's a miracle that the Texans were even in it. But, of course, that defense is extremely stout. I got a couple of questions here. Your thoughts on how quickly Vrabel's been able to do this to get the Patriots back into conference championship game. And look, coming out of college, everybody thought C.J. Stroud was the guy. And his rookie season, he proved that he was the guy. But that was some of the worst quarterbacking I've ever seen in my life. The conditions are the conditions. But what do you do if you're the Texans now with a defense like that, Super Bowl ready, and a quarterback that looked like he was seeing ghosts all day?
Yeah, as far as the Patriots, just done a tremendous job to build that roster up so quick. That was a team that spent it was them and the Vikings that spent the most money over the offseason, and the Patriots obviously did a better job in free agency there, just plugging all their holes. They've drafted well the last couple of years, obviously Drake May's ascendance and everything like that, and you see how good of a coach team that they are as well. As far as the Texans, they would have won that game if Davis Mills had played 4 quarters. You would have won that game if you had even mediocre quarterback play. I couldn't agree with you anymore watching Stroud there, especially the first half. I shut the thing off before halftime. It was another thing where you knew the one team was going to lose. I had cleaning to do around the house. I'm having people over for the national title game today. If C.J. Stroud isn't going to show up for that game, I'm not showing up for the second half. I'm gonna get to my cleaning kind of a thing. Houston's got an issue there because the whole thing, and you listen to the narrative, and it's no problem. CJ, he was so good. He's great. We're going to build around him. It's just he's not comfortable in the offense. So we'll get a new offensive coordinator. It'll be no problem. They've already done that once. CJ Stroud was really good as a rookie for Bobby Slowick. Then the second year he regresses, and they're like, "Oh, it's Bobby Slowick's fault." So we'll just get a new offensive system that CJ is more comfortable in, and there's going to be no problems. Then the new guy comes in, and you have the same issue there. They're going to have to confront at a certain point, is it not an offensive coordinator issue? Is it a C.J. Stroud issue? And, you can give C.J. Stroud the benefit of the doubt of his running back was Woody Marks. He's just a guy, right? Nico Collins wasn't playing in that game. His offensive line isn't great. The conditions were bad. So, you can give him that benefit of the doubt. But to your point, that you were not playing competitive football at that time. With the way C.J. Stroud was playing, categorically, Houston could not win that game. You go into a game that you cannot win because of quarterback play, they have to figure that out. And C.J. Stroud's a guy, when it's a clean pocket, he gets a good look, and he has the skill talent out there, that's when he's a really good quarterback, right? But he's not a guy that can raise the supporting cast. He's a guy that needs the supporting cast to raise him. So I think you also have to keep that in mind when you're thinking about the new offensive coordinator that's going to be there.
Sunday night was a lot of fun, and it was also pretty chaotic. Chaos seemed to be kind of the common theme throughout the course of the divisional round, and quite frankly, the wild card, too. It's just the NFL playoffs. Few things are better. And I give the Rams a lot of credit. We've got a lot of local players that are still playing, and we got some former Utes on the Broncos. Of course, Puka Nacua played his college ball at Brigham Young. That throw in a vacuum for Caleb Williams, it's very rare. I've been in this industry 20 years now, Thor. It's very rare that I'll stand up off the couch when something happens, and the throw that Caleb was able to somehow, some way find Clement in the back of the end zone was quite a moment. But the Rams go in there in those conditions for a team that plays indoors and lives in a spot of our country that's usually 75 degrees and sunny. You got to give them a lot of credit. Your takeaways from the Rams' overtime win against the Bears.
Yeah, what a wild game. And same thing over here on that throw that Williams had there. I had to pick my jaw off the ground. That was like watching a 3/4 of the court, shot at the very end of a game and it swishes. The defense helped out a little bit, in that case. I'm not sure what Durant was doing there. Obviously the Rams thought that he pushed off. I think I would have had more resources in the end zone if I was the Rams there. So, to address that. But yeah, and what you're thinking when you're at home with them doing that, you've seen it over and over again this season, the Bears pulling out games at the very end that they probably didn't deserve to win. And you just thought that you were going to get that again. And credit to the Rams for showing up in overtime and being able to polish that game off. Even you had Chicago driving down for the win there, and then the Rams able to pick off Williams and obviously go and get the game-winning score there to advance to the Super Bowl. But, yeah, it's interesting thinking about Chicago going forward because Caleb Williams, you still have 2 years of the rookie contract on him, but because of how aggressive the Bears have been in free agency and with veterans and stuff like that, they're already running into some cap issues even while the rookie contract's still there with the quarterback. They got some really tough decisions to make this offseason, and then you have to play the first-place schedule next year as well. So be interesting to see the things that the Bears do this offseason because they're going to have to cull some guys off that roster.
Let's look ahead to Sunday. The Patriots will roll into Denver as a 5.5-point favorite. That over-under is 41.5, of course, as we referenced. Denver's going to be without their starting quarterback, and we'll see what Sean Payton can scheme. That defense is nasty. Maybe they can figure something out. The spread feels about right, if I'm honest. But what do you? A quick preview there. Broncos Patriots coming up on Sunday.
Yeah, I would definitely lean towards the Patriots with Jarrett Stidham for Bo Nix. I think, though, that I would take the points with the home underdog there. People around the Broncos will swear to you that there is not a huge difference qualitatively between Stidham and Nix. Certainly Stidham, you recall the training camp of last year when Nix was a rookie. people thought Stidham was going to win that job, and Stidham was crestfallen when he didn't. He thought he was the better quarterback. Stidham has a stronger arm than Nix. Nix is more mobile, but Sean Payton and that offensive staff is so good calling game scripts and game plans that address the players on hand. They're going to tailor it to the personnel that they have on hand. So I expect them to have a clever game plan that is specific to Jarrett Stidham and not to Bo Nix, and hopefully keep the game close. They obviously have the awesome defense there in Denver, and you're playing at altitude. But, yeah, just with Nix being out, it's tough to take Denver straight up. But I think I would take those 5.5 points or wait till later in the week and hope it gets to 6.
Seahawks are only getting 2.5 at home against the Rams. 47.5 is your over/under. Divisional foes, of course. These two teams know each other really well. I think this is going to be a lot of fun. We're pulling for the Rams around here, if I'm honest. But how do you see it going down in Seattle coming up on Sunday?
Yeah, I'm going to lean towards the Rams there as well. You've seen the Rams be able to do stuff to Sam Darnold the last couple of years. I suppose there was the one exception in the regular season this year, but Sam's had a couple tough games against the Rams with turnovers and stuff like that, with the Vikings and, of course, the Seahawks here. They seem to have a good beat on him. The key, of course, the thing I was talking about before is you cannot fall down if you're the Rams. That's where the Seahawks are going to get you. But if you can play competitively with them, get that thing into halftime, and try to manufacture a lead at some point, pull Seattle out of their run-first type thing, and then the play action, the deep shots. If you can pull them out of that and make them play it more straight and have to throw downfield more without the threat of that run game, that's where you can start picking off Darnold and turn the tides on them. So I would lean towards the Rams. It's a close one. That spread is right, but I would lean towards the Rams in that one.
Thor, where can people go find your work, buddy?
I'm at Score North now. I have a new show called Thor Talks Purple that's 5 days a week. We also have a show called Football Takes on there. And on the Score North YouTube channel tonight, 5 p.m. Central in 5:30 p.m. Central. So in about an hour, we're going to have a live college football preview show going on as well.
Thank you, my friend. Enjoy the game tonight. We'll get you back on soon, okay?
Appreciate you. Take it easy.
All right, Thor Nystrom at ThorKU is where you find him on social media. College football national championship game. It's just about 2 hours away between Indiana and Miami. The late money has come in towards the Hurricanes, but Indiana's still a 7.5-point favorite. That over-under has moved down to 46.5. Some breaking news. The Dolphins are going to hire Jeff Hafley as their head coach. He was the Packers defensive coordinator over the past couple of seasons. Remember, he was the guy that left Boston College as the head coach when he saw the landscape of college football changing to take a coordinator job in the NFL, and now he lands his own head job now as Mike McDaniels has been fired, and they are going to make that, I feel like it is official if it's Adam Schefter, it usually is. So Jeff Hafley, your new head coach of the Miami Dolphins. All right, we still have Jason Batakiao set to join us from the Salt Lake Tribune. He covers the Utes. Utes had the first Big 12 win over the weekend. We'll do some college hoops coming up in a bit. We have Zach Moss, former Utah running back, and then Sean O'Connell, host of our midday show, the OC Show. He'll join us in the 5 o'clock hour to preview tonight's game, Miami-Indiana. It is the last college football game of the season, kids, so enjoy it. And you can hear it all right here on your home of the Utes, ESPN 700. The Buffalo Bills have fired Sean McDermott after 9 years as the Bills head coach. It feels a little harsh with all of that success, but it's not that rare in the NFL. And certainly when you have a generational quarterback like Josh Allen after 9 years as the head coach, and I think 7 of them with Josh, maybe, if I remember right, 6 or 7, and no Super Bowl appearances. Denver did this with Dan Reeves, if you remember. He had 3 Super Bowls with Elway. They lost all of them. Then they moved on and, ultimately were able to find their way to winning Super Bowls. So feels harsh for a guy that I think he was 98-50, 5 straight divisional championships, lost it this year to the Patriots. And, of course, it's kind of like if you're a Jazz fan, if you're a Knicks fan, unfortunately, the 2 teams that I grew up cheering for had our best years when a guy named Michael Jordan was playing pro basketball, as Michael Jordan ripped the rings off the fingers of John Stockton, Karl Malone, Patrick Ewing, and others. Went up against Mahomes, right? And I think it was 3 straight years they lost the conference championship game to the Kansas City Chiefs. So McDermott is out, and you have to wonder how many coaches that have signed, namely John Harbaugh, wish they would have waited for a couple of weeks before making their decision. It's kind of like if Will Hardy would have waited a couple of weeks, he'd be the head coach of the Celtics, not the Jazz, as a result of what happened with Ime Udoka. But you never know as it pertains to the timing. So there will be a total of 10 NFL teams that will have new coaches next year, basically a third of the league deciding to change course. And that Bills-Broncos game, man, that was a hell of a game. And it feels really, really hard for a guy to lose his job when so many minor things could have gone the other way, and they're playing for a conference championship. But that's kind of the breaking news out of the world of pro football today. National championship style, Miami, Indiana. Don't forget, kickoff will be at 5:30 as we sit here right now. Indiana, 7.5 points. That's the line. It's moved away towards Miami on 2 different occasions, and the over-under right now is 46.5. Coming up, conference championship weekend in the world of the NFL. Broncos, Patriots. It's the Jared Stidham show. I kind of feel bad for my Bronco fan friends after a number of years waiting for your team to be back where they're at now on the precipice of going to a Super Bowl. You lose your starting quarterback to a broken bone in his ankle. You got to give Bo Nix a ton of credit. It was interesting. Porter, I think you were at this game. When Oregon was here, when Bo Nix was a quarterback and Oregon was here, I was on the sideline for the entire game. That was kind of my eye-opening wake-up moment to just what a special leader and decision-maker Bo Nix was. I mean, his ability to kind of process things very quickly and change on the fly against the Utes here in Salt Lake was really eye-opening. You were at that game, weren't you? I think we were kind of watching that together on the sideline, if I remember.
Yeah. And Bo Nix, obviously, there's plenty of sample size with him. I think he's still the leader in starts as a college football quarterback. I think that you had flashes of what he was, but he was just so consistent, and it never culminated in a Heisman Trophy or the stuff that you see from Caleb Williams. Frankly, he's not capable of a lot of the stuff that Caleb Williams can do. And people take this as an insult. I don't mean it as that, but managing a football game as a quarterback, right? People will say, "Oh, he's a game manager," meaning maybe he doesn't have like the top end talent that some of the other guys do. Sometimes that's all you need, and sometimes it's what you really need. If you remember, a couple nights ago, last night, Caleb Williams, he made all the plays you needed to, and then when you just needed him to manage a first down, he threw a pick deep down the right side of the field. Right now, look at the receiver stopping running his route. It's part of it. But at that point, you don't really need to even put the ball in play out there, right? It's stuff like that Bo Nix is so good at because he has so much experience under center that just makes him kind of ready for the moment. And it really unfortunate to see him, I guess not really see him go down, but see Sean Payton come out and tell us that he went down in that press conference. You saw him kind of limping off the field, and Garrett Bowles stopped and checked on him, and you could see there was a little panic with both of them. but didn't really know what it was until late after the game. And then, yeah, man, you turn to a guy in Jarrett Stidham who I don't think he's taken a snap since 2023. That's a really tough out. But yeah, man, I go back to watching Bo Nix at Oregon and even at Auburn before, where you could just tell that he had such poise and moxie in the pocket and a feel for the game of football, a feel for situational football. If you're a certain position on the field, you don't necessarily need to have the ins and outs of situational football down. If you're sometimes a star wide receiver who's not in on every down, maybe an edge who is a pass rushing specialist, you kind of know what you're going out there for. If you're a quarterback, situational football is almost as important as your arm. And he is among the best at that part of the game that I've seen at the college level and saw at the college level. And that's kind of a big part of why he's having success in Denver.
I've never really viewed, and you bring up some interesting points there, because Sean Payton's offense, and I think one of the things that, I don't think he's said this himself, one of the things that attracted him to Bo is his ability to process. And, remember, Drew Brees was Sean's quarterback in New Orleans, and Drew, I've met Drew Brees. He's my size. He's not some physically intimidating Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson athlete. He was able to set records because of his ability to process Sean's system. And Sean said he saw some Drew in Bo. I've never really viewed the whole game manager thing as this ultimate insult. I mean, look, that's what Brady did at the highest level. And, Tom, by his own admission, didn't have the talent that an Aaron Rodgers had. Aaron Rodgers has turned into a bit of a game manager. I feel like it's a term that has been co-opted and turned into an insult when so many of these offensive concepts and schemes are so complex. Like, being able to manage your way around Sean Payton's system, I think, is a compliment.
And it is a compliment. It's just one of the aspects of the game that you have to have as a quarterback. But as you said, it kind of got co-opted into an insult by people who used it as you have a limitation on your talent, right? You maybe don't have the arm talent of a Aaron Rodgers, of a Patrick Mahomes, guys like that. Or Josh Allen, of course, has some just absurd ball skills where third down, fourth down, and he's doing shovel passes 18 yards deep down the field, right? It's stuff like that some guys are just capable of doing, but it's also those guys who sometimes rely on that a little too much and get them stuck in bad positions. I was just talking about Caleb Williams, who, you end up on SportsCenter, you end up the top play, you are going to have people talking about you all offseason because of one play where you're off your back foot, throwing 50 yards into the end zone. But also, had you pre-snap recognize the Mike linebacker was coming up to the line of scrimmage and you had two guys coming off the edge, you maybe could have gotten a different playoff, right? It's just situations like that a lot of quarterbacks in today's age don't have. And I don't know that they're going to, because they grew up not having that. They grew up in AAU type 7-on-7 football where your cadence is just a clap and you're off. You're going. You're running the play your coach called, and that's it. It was we will go back to when Phillip Rivers came in and started to actually diagnose stuff at the line of scrimmage. And all the announcers in the NFL were like, "Whoa, we haven't really seen much of this lately." Yeah. Right? It's a lost art, not a totally lost art part of the football game. That if you can combine it with some of the arm talent that Josh Allen has, a Patrick Mahomes has, then you get great quarterbacks, and that is one of the reasons Mahomes is so special. You don't see him throwing interceptions in overtime like the one you saw from Caleb Williams, because he's combined that kind of arm talent with just a really good knowledge of situational football and what you need at that moment on that down.
Yeah, and it does lead into a conversation. I was debating this with Thor, and I think we were both on the same page. And look, I think there are some things that you can criticize on this Monday morning quarterback profession of ours as far as what Josh Allen did or did not do in that loss against Denver. He took some very unnecessary chances. He said it himself. He put the ball on the deck twice. He threw 2 picks. You can't turn it over 5 times in a playoff game, and it's probably one of the reasons why their head coach is looking for a new job. But I look at Buffalo from a personnel standpoint. They have 0 Pro Bowlers on defense. And, they've got, like, our guy Cole Bishop is growing into a really good player. They've got some, of course, locals on that roster. Dalton Kincaid had an awesome game again. They don't have any wide receiver ones. And to me, you could even make an argument like, Dalton's awesome when it comes to being able to catch passes from the tight end position, but Khalil Shakir might be a 3 on most teams. I think they thought the Keon Coleman kid would evolve into something that he hasn't. I feel like Josh has this mentality that if he doesn't play Superman every game, they don't have a chance. And it's almost like how they're built, right? But because he is 29, I believe, and still, to me, a generationally special player at that position. If I asked you today, better open job in the NFL, Baltimore or Buffalo, which job would you say and why?
If you're just looking at rosters and what they have, I think it's almost 6s. I might take Buffalo just because of Josh Allen over Lamar Jackson, but then we get past the roster, just what you have in front of you with players, and we're talking about ownership, we're talking about the market. I might veer towards Baltimore, right? That's an organization who just proved to you they will let a guy coach for 20 years, and you may have a job after Lamar Jackson, after Josh Allen, right? That's not something I necessarily know will happen in Buffalo just because it's just been so unsuccessful there outside of getting to some Super Bowls that I think there's a lot of pressure on someone to come in there and win, right? And do so at a high level. Whereas in Baltimore, they've got a few Super Bowls under their belt. They're kind of used to winning and contending for that division. That's a tough one because I think it's really almost 6s when it comes and you're just looking at the roster. You're just looking at what you have in front of you as far as an asset standpoint. And because I almost think of that as a tie, I'm going to say, well, maybe I side with the organization who might put more stock into me and has a better track record of putting rosters together.
Yeah, and I do, quick glance, and if you kind of did a deep dive, as I referenced, the Bills don't have any all-pros on defense. And, the Ravens, Roquan Smith, Kyle Hamilton, Nate Wiggins, like the better roster top to bottom is probably in Baltimore. But I think if you go back historically speaking, and it sucks that these athletic quarterbacks don't typically last, and Lamar has proven to be just a better pocket passer than most people thought he was going to be coming out of college. But we go down the list. I mean, even Steve Young, Randall Cunningham, Mike Vick. They're like the baddest dudes on the planet for 4 or 5 years, and then you're a Vic guy. Whether it's injuries or just age, like Lamar looked different this year because he does not have the explosive athletic ability he did when he was 25, because none of us do. The better rosters in Baltimore, but I feel like the gap between Josh and Lamar is bigger now than it was a year ago and will continue to kind of grow, if that makes sense.
And then, I guess if you take that job, let's say the same guys offered both jobs, you take the Buffalo one because of Josh Allen. You don't take it because of the rest of the roster, because of the GM and the owners that you're going to be working for. You're taking it because you really believe that guy, 6'5", 240 pounds, pocket passer, but also a threat on the ground. Like, he is special. There's no doubt about the fact that he is special. And if you feel like you can get Josh Allen to that next level, then you have maybe, if we look down the road, best player in the league in 5, 6, 7 years, right? And that's something that, maybe the clock is ticking on Lamar a little bit quicker on. But yeah, that's for me the only thing that would sway me towards Buffalo over Baltimore is just if you are really, really high on one Josh Allen, and I would understand that. He's phenomenal. It does seem like too much is sometimes asked of him, and then because of that, he tries to do too much, and kind of plays outside of himself. And that does seem to be a little bit of a running issue in Buffalo.
Yeah, and whoever gets that job, I mean, again, this has happened often in NFL history where a guy takes a job, he gets them close, and then no matter how many times he knocks on the door, at some point, if he's not able to knock the door down, the organization moves on to a different coach, and it's worked. I mean, there are a ton of examples of coaches that have taken over a roster from a previous coach that couldn't quite get it done, and then boom, a change, a different voice, a change of culture ultimately leads to Super Bowls. And I can remember when I was watching Aaron Rodgers when he kind of broke into his prime after he got the start, watching Favre for 3 years. And when Aaron became Aaron, I just remember thinking like, dude, he is way too good to not win a Super Bowl. And then I felt like he was way too good to only win one. I mean, he was the best quarterback from a talent standpoint. And honestly, during his prime, maybe more so than any quarterback I'd ever seen. I've always been kind of a Montana guy when it comes to the greatest QBs of all time. But Aaron, from strictly his talent standpoint, always felt like he was just too good to win one. And then when he got one, I always thought he would get multiple, but he never did. And if you're Josh Allen now at the age of 29, you've never even played in a Super Bowl. He has the most wins as a starting quarterback of any quarterback that has not gone to a Super Bowl. And the Buffalo Bills have the most playoff wins during McDermott's tenure without getting to the Super Bowl. So really is that final step. But we need to get to the most important story of the day, Porter Larson, because I have a prediction.
Oh, no.
LeBron James is not going to show up at the All-Star game next month.
Because he's not a starter?
Exactly. So the All-Star starters have been released. Jalen Brunson, Cade Cunningham, Jaylen Brown, Giannis, and Tyrese Maxey in the East. Luka Doncic, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Stephen Wardell Curry, and Victor Wembanyama, in addition to Nikola Jokic, are your starters. I'm calling it right now. LeBron won't show up.
Okay.
He's going to whine. He's going to create a patch. He's going to, he's going to passive-aggressively send out tweets. He's going to do something to draw attention to himself with the fact that he's not starting, and he's not going to show up at the All-Star game. I
know you say that you're not a LeBron hater.
I'm not.
Okay.
As a player.
Right. You're a LeBron hater.
As a player.
You have spent like a good portion of the last couple of weeks with LeBron stuff. All of it has been like just kind of...
I'm not a LeBron hater as a player.
Okay.
That's what I need to make clear. And how can you be, quite frankly?
Right. I
want to meet that guy.
There are some.
As
that,
a player?
Think he doesn't have like a good offensive bag, right? He doesn't have the skill set there, but,
Well, then you're not watching.
Yeah.
You can't hate anything about LeBron as a player. There are several things off the court about LeBron as a person and as a leader that you can crack on.
I'll take up your prediction, though. I bet he's there, and I bet he's on the bench, and I bet he has a good time.
You think so?
Yeah, why not?
I'll bet you an Uncrustable.
2.
2? Fine. 21 years as an All-Star for LeBron.
Right.
21 straight years. So... my guess is he's going to make the team. What's the Lakers' record at this point?
Yeah, I mean, he's still averaging 24, 6, and 7. I know it's not as hardy of a stat line as it sometimes is because of the pace of play and, frankly, the way that we play in regular season. It seems like a lot of pickup ball, to be honest with you, when I watch, especially with the Lakers. And if they're winning, he just kind of steps off the floor. So I don't know, man. He'll probably be on the All-Star team, but at this point, not only to me has like regular season NBA gotten to the point where I'm not paying attention, but the All-Star game, the All-Star weekend, I don't know. I don't know if anyone should show up for that right now.
24 games for LeBron, 22.6 points. 6 boards, 7 assists. You know what's Austin Reeves has better numbers than LeBron this year. 27 points, 6 assists, 5 boards. So they're pretty similar. But Luke is the best player, and so the All-Star starters were released. And by the way, just underscore what an unserious exercise this is. They allow the players a portion of the vote. 2 players voted for Bronny James to start in the game. Walker Kessler got a vote to start in the game as well. It's an unserious exercise.
So that means the players that voted for Bronny were LeBron and Bronny?
Probably.
And then Andy Larson on the Walker Kessler?
That would be my guess. Yeah, it's an unserious exercise. That kind of caught me when I saw that it had been announced. And then last thing, the Jazz are not getting 2 All-Stars. Can we please stop saying this out loud?
Listen, Lowry,
maybe.
He might be an All-Star, but and this goes back to how unserious this has gotten, we shouldn't be giving All-Stars out to teams who have 14 wins, right?
Right, exactly.
An All-Star, I think, should be someone who is among the best, not only the best, 5, 10, 15 players in the league, but is also playing some winning basketball and putting on a good show for the brand of the National Basketball Association, right? The All-Star, the whole weekend and the whole thing, if you go back to like 2004, 2005, 2006, I know I was young. I know maybe I was a little bit of a prisoner of the moment. But when you had the premier 10 to 15 players on the All-Star game and they went out and like kind of played a real basketball game, that was enjoyable.
There was nothing better, dude. It used to be the coolest pickup game that you could find.
And now you get through the regular season of what is not the coolest pickup you can find, and you get to the All-Star break, and there are, guys that are sitting it out because the league's not taking it seriously. You mentioned LeBron. Maybe he does sit out because there's a Lakers playoff run on the back end as well. And you'll have, all respect to some of the guys that make the roster and make the All-Star game, players that the typical fan has never heard of playing in the All-Star game. And, I just think that it's continuing down a road where the NBA is going to have to try to do something different to get attention on it. And with Adam Silver in charge, I think he's going to try to do something too different, too gimmicky, and it's going to continue to kind of backfire. And that's, unfortunately, I feel like a problem the league is kind of running straight towards.
Yeah, and at this point, I used to yell about it, try to solicit like solutions. I don't think there is one. I just think it is what it is now. It's a new generation. It's a new league. And as I'm looking at this, there's not room for Lowry. There just isn't. Okay, so when you look at the starters for the Western Conference, as we referenced, it's Luka, it's SGA, it's Steph, it's Wembanyama, and it's Jokic. So if you look at the splits, if you look at, the standings right now, just a quick projection, Booker's going to be in, Durant's going to be in, Ant probably should have started, Chet Holmgren, Jamal Murray, Alfred Şengün. That leaves one spot.
Yeah, and the front court in the West is just too tough.
Yeah.
In addition.
That leaves one. So we got a break, and we'll do that. Let me just look at Lowry's splits real quick. So he's played in 33 games, which actually isn't bad. I think Wembanyama's played in 25. 28 points, 7 boards, shooting 37% from 3, 88% from. He's having a hell of a year. But Keontae's not going. If there's a player for the Jazz that has a chance, it's going to be Markkanen. But again, as Porter referenced, if you're going to be unserious about competing, you should not get any sort of award or, what have you. All-Star starter content on a Monday. That's enough of that. 2 hours down, 2 hours to go. Jason Batakiao from the Salt Lake Tribune will join us. He covers the Utes. Alex Jensen and the running Utes got their first Big 12 win over the weekend. BYU lost in conference play for the first time. So did Utah State. Transfer portal stuff. We'll bring in Jason. Former Ute Zach Moss, one of our friends. He'll stop by. Then Sean O'Connell, who hosts our midday show, will join us in the 5 o'clock hour to get you ready for Miami, Indiana. It's the final game of the college football season. You catch it right here on ESPN 700. All right, Zach Moss is going to roll by. We'll preview tonight's game with Zach, talk some NFL with Zach, and talk some Utes as well. Sean O'Connell will join us in the 5 o'clock hour of the show. We typically do Drive at 5, but today is a special day because it's the final day of the college football season. And the national championship between Indiana and Miami can be heard on this radio station. Our next guest covers the Utes for the Salt Lake Tribune. He is a Halo aficionado. He is a charming, handsome young man. He is Jason Batacchio on a Monday afternoon. Hello, young man. How are you?
I'm doing good, man. Just enjoying a much-needed day off, I would say. So nothing much going on here. Going to watch the national championship with some friends tonight and call it a day.
How much Halo have you played today, Jason?
None.
Okay.
I haven't played any Halo. I haven't played Halo in a long time. So
wait. When you're picking up the sticks these days, what are you playing?
I've just been playing some college football, man. It's,
Okay.
Kind of my go-to game. I got a dynasty league with some friends, so.
Okay, that a guy.
I play it with them.
Okay, so what is that?
Yeah.
What I have not played. So what does that entail? Do you guys like play against each other online?
Yeah, so it's God. This kind of sounds nerdy, but whatever. It's just like we have like a 10-person league. We're all like, I guess, quote unquote, like head coaches of a certain program. And you get to like recruit and like do all that stuff. So like right now, I'm the coach of NC State. We're not faring too well on the recruiting trail right now. Let's just say that. But my friends are like, I got 2 friends in the ACC. I got another few friends in the Big 12 and then in the Big 10 as well. So we got like a whole league and then just kind of recruit against each other and see who can win the national championship. And then we just, sometimes we play against each other, but it's kind of just a race to the playoff, honestly. So yeah, it's kind of cool.
So I would imagine you're forced to make sure you're holding the women back one by one as they're lining up for dates. Jason, is that fair to say?
Oh yeah, 100%.
That a guy. Wait, why'd you choose NC State?
I mean, I started off with like Memphis, and then I landed at NC State. It was like my first Power 4 job offer. So.
Oh, okay. Well, then congratulations are in order then, right? With the P4 job offer.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, buddy. It's been a while because I know you've been a busy boy. So we're going to talk about some things that I'm sure some listeners will complain about because it's yesterday's news, but because we haven't been able to catch up. Let's start with the private equity deal that Utah struck with Ocho Capital, and you and Courtney did some really good reporting on this. Andy wrote on it as well. So kind of take us through this, when it came down, and then the process you guys went through to report on it, and what you think our listeners would find most interesting.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the private equity deal, there's so much that we don't know yet, and there's just so much that we're continuing to learn throughout the days. But, I think in the modern day of college athletics, schools are facing deficits. We know, the University of Utah is facing a deficit. Colorado, Ohio State, all those programs are facing deficits. And it's really just kind of a one-of-its-kind, first-of-its-kind move. Let me correct myself, to kind of stay ahead on deficits. From my knowledge, I think they're going to fund most of the capital deal to, I guess, fund revenue sharing, which is interesting. And then obviously the for-profit LLC will give, Utah players opportunities to, have true NIL on top of, whatever they're getting in rev share. Obviously, a lot of that will go to football and men's basketball and, whatever sports are there. And so, that story, that's the first to come. There's been a lot of faculty pushback because, you are sort of selling off a portion of a university foundation to a private equity company, and private equity has a lot of negative connotations that come with it. But it's just a world that, college athletics is in. I think President Randall's trying to be, I guess, expansive and experimental with what's going on. And, I think a big part of it too was, the university didn't want to raise student fees. They didn't want to raise tuition, or just some of the other levers that are potentially going to come down the line for other universities. And I think there's going to be more private equity deals. I think this is just the first of its kind. And I think the NCAA world's kind of watching on and see what Utah does with it. But I don't know. It'll be interesting. A lot of the details that come out, I already know a few. I don't want to share just because kind of stuff that I've learned off the record. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how the public reacts to certain things in the next few months, especially when contract details come out and all that stuff. But yeah, that's kind of all I know right now, or at least all I can share. So yeah, there's a lot to come, I would assume, in the next few weeks and maybe even months. So
yeah. we had Aaron in studio, and Aaron is your boss. Mm-hmm. So I'm bringing that up because I want to let you know that you're safe to answer the following question, because Aaron did. Okay. When it comes to grandma requests or whatever you guys, like the public records request that you guys basically file to get information with things like this, what's the process? Where are we at? And have they responded to your request for these public records?
Oh man, that's a good question. It's always public records are an interesting thing in 2026, I would say. But it's fascinating. You have multiple open records requests that you'll put in. I think I have multiple for the Ocho Capital deal, and some are still processing in months' time, and other ones are, they're coming down the pipeline, hopefully here in the next few months. So I would say the responsiveness has been less than apt. We'll say that. But, it's just a game that you got to play. I mean, I hate saying game, but it's just, it's just part of the gig, and open records is, part of it as well. So, yeah.
To the layman out there, the simp that doesn't understand these things, maybe I'm saying me basically. The lack of response would indicate what? That they have something that they don't want you to know? Is it just caught up in a trail of paperwork? Like the fact that they won't get back to you, I think lands with most people. Like there are some things and details with the framework of the deal that maybe they don't want to get public. Is that fair?
I think the deal isn't finalized yet, so I don't think there's a lot that the U could do to, I guess, share, the concepts or just things of the deal yet, because it isn't quote unquote finalized and signed, and all that legal stuff is yet to be done, I'm sure. But I think there's just been a general lack of responsiveness in open records. I can make a record request, and it goes months and months and months unrecognized until it's. Say I made one in December, I probably won't get that one until June or May. So, that's just kind of the stuff that we deal with, and you have to go forward with. And I think there's a lot of backlogs at the U. At least that's what they say when they delay a private records request or a grandma request and all that stuff. And it's just part of the gig, something we have to deal with as journalists. And I take the challenge head on, and don't have anything bad to say about anybody, but, it's just, that's the truth. There's been a general lack of responsiveness and delays on certain things, and that's just my honest truth. And, I'm not going to lie about that, but, I think there are questions of transparency sometimes with the U. I think, to put it kindly, sometimes, people will request certain things, or just media access in general can be a bit spotty. So, but that's my take on things. I'm not going to get too deep into it, but, that's kind of going into it before I say anything tricky.
No, you're good.
The best way to say it.
No, you're good. And it's never a personal thing. I think some people make it a personal thing. Like you're doing your job. Right. And the job, as a journalist like you guys are, speak truth to power, and checks and balances are important. But I wanted to follow up on the faculty pushback, because, one of my, just like my antennas went up when I saw this deal. And one of my inclinations was, I wonder how this lands at the U with people that look like we're in sports. And so we have this tendency to believe like everybody loves sports and everybody is into it. Like that's not true. Like there are plenty of people that don't care about sports, plenty of people that don't even like it. And when it comes to the landscape and ecosystem of an institution and a university, there are a lot of people on the academic side that oftentimes push back on the favored treatment that they perceive that the athletic side receives. The chasm between academia and athletics with colleges, that's nothing new, Jason. So when it comes to the reaction that you've been able to, glean of the non-athletic portion of the ecosystem of the U, what are some of the things you can share?
Yeah, I think, I was talking to a professor off the record. I'm not going to name who, obviously, but, I was talking to a non-tenured professor at the University of Utah. And, we were just talking about, a lot of times athletics gets the first nod in a lot of things. But meanwhile, the state is forcing budget cuts. Honestly, at a federal level, there's been budget cuts. And so there's kind of questions about just, what does this mean for the university long term? How could it affect the reputation, say it does fail? And some people that I talk to get really concerned about, is President Randall and AD Mark Harlan just using this as as a stepping stone for a next job, and obviously those two have been there for a long time. I know President Randall used to be the business dean, and so I would caution against, people saying that, they're using it as a stepping stone deal, but there is real risk in it. I think faculty gets scared about that. I think there's just a lot of hesitancy because it is private equity. And so, when there are budget cuts happening and then athletics pulls out this, 150, 500 million, whatever the valuation was, private equity deal, and they bring it to the table, there's real questions, especially of some people are like, we're having budget cuts, but athletics can get this lump sum, almost cash payment. I assume it's not a lump sum cash payment, but a lot of people see 500 million and they kind of just assume that. And so, there's just questions. I think that's going to happen. It's as you mentioned, that's what college athletics and education is, especially as the model has professionalized so much over the last, 5 years, ever since NIL became a thing in the world. And so, I think that there's a real chasm between faculty and the U and just this private equity deal. And I would say the same thing for state legislators and the auditor, the state auditor in general. And, it'll be interesting to see how these things develop, especially with the legislative session opening up tomorrow. And so, that's kind of all I can say on that. But the tension is real. The questions are real. And, faculty gets, I think, frustrated more and more, especially with budget cuts coming down the line, on a federal and a state level. So that's what I would say.
Let me move over to the space that I think most listeners would care about. And, it was kind of a chaotic week when this deal went down. I felt like I was getting my master's in finance, drinking through a fire hose. And, I have family in private equity. I have friends in private equity. So luckily I have a lot of resources to learn about the nature of what this is and know a lot of people in the space. And because I know a lot of people in the space, it's very simple to reduce this to one thing, and that is they expect to profit when they invest a tremendous amount of money. And look, not every single private equity deal, leads to revenue generation, but that's what they expect when they're writing checks like this. And so it's easy to draw a line between, okay, Utah and Otro Capital have this deal now, and Otro Capital, most of whom are located in my old stomping grounds in the Northeast, don't give a rip about, the history of Utah football or anything ancillary that makes your feelings feel good. They are expecting a return here. So maybe the answer to this question. I've just pontificated on the possibilities of things like the consumer and customer experience will be probably, it'll probably be improved. So my guess is we're going to see some renovations to the stadiums, some bunker suites, some, instead of the $4 hot dog at the Huntsman Center, you'll have better food options, better drink options. And as a result, you will be asked to pay more for your consumer experience. And that's tickets, it's food and bev, it's merch, it's probably tailgating. Whatever the game day experience includes, my guess is it will be heightened and it will be more expensive. Tell me what you think.
Right. Yeah, I would kind of agree along the lines of that. I think a lot of what this capital deal is going to fund, whether it is, revenue sharing or just, different things to Rice Eccles Stadium. I did a story, 3-4 months ago about, the concourse issues and fans being very vocal about that. One guy told me that he would wait in line and he didn't get back to his seat till, midway through the third quarter, and he left at halftime. And so, those are real tangible things that people have problems with. And I think, the U wants to use a lot of this capital deal. Obviously we don't know percentages, or we don't know, what they want to do, but there's a real interest based off of just some of the stuff that I've learned to, renovate Rice Eccles Stadium, whether that is adding LED lights, adding more premium seating. I think, 5,000-6,000 is a number that I've heard tossed around at Rice Eccles Stadium for more premium suites. And so, I think there's a lot that could happen, but it hasn't happened yet. But I would expect, whether it is ticket prices or other things, for those to go up, colleges and athletic departments nowadays are always looking at what can they do to drive up revenue in different places, especially when you have a $20.5 million bill put on your table with revenue sharing, and that's going up every year. I think it's a 2.5% accelerator. So I think, next year it's going up to $22.5 million, or I could be wrong on that, check my numbers. But, the bill's just getting bigger, and spending is just getting more. And, programs are needing to spend money. And part of this capital deal is, hey, there's a front load of money. And you're right. They do expect a return on investment. So, I would expect merchandise. I would expect, the quality of the game day experience to naturally go up, whether that is the Huntsman Center or Rice Eccles Stadium, particularly the Huntsman Center. I think they have to figure out what they want to do with that moving forward, especially with, the capital deal kind of coming down the pipeline. They've talked renovations, they've talked a new arena, but I don't think that they've come to a decision yet. And I think a lot of that relies on cost. So yeah, I would expect that, it'll be interesting to see what has happened. I would say, to the athletic director's credit, they have been very honest and open about, their raising of ticket prices. They've done that, I think ever since Mark Harlan got there. So it's a reality. But I would expect concessions, quality items, maybe merchandise, jersey sales, all of those things to raise in prices, which, I'm sure the natural fan scoffs at, but maybe, a different experience, maybe some LED lights, maybe some drone shows, maybe, an expanded concourse. You're like, okay, I'll spend an extra $3 or $4 on, this concession item. And so it'll be interesting to see how fans react to that change if it does happen. I'm not saying any guarantees, but, I think a lot of those things would come down the pipeline. So I think you're correct on your assessment is the easy way to say it. I probably could have said it in less words. So
no, man, no. This is a 4-hour sports talk radio show. My guests need to be long-winded. Let one more thing here, and then I'll ask you about the transfer portal. Then we'll set you loose. Mm-hmm. You referenced the deal's not consummated yet, and there are a lot of complications as it pertains to Utah being a publicly owned institution, and a lot of our local legislators took to social media to express some trepidation, before finding out what all of the details look like. Do you think there are any roadblocks left? Do you think they're trying to traverse this space? Do you have confidence that we will actually get news that this deal has been finalized, or are there things standing in its way?
Well, to my understanding, there was actually a bill passed last legislative session that allowed private equity companies to make deals with college athletic institutions. It was tucked under a bill. I don't know what bill it is. I'd have to go back and look. But to my knowledge, that bill is signed. It's in law. So technically, the University of Utah can make a private equity deal. Where I think things could get tricky is if the state auditor starts noticing red flags. I think say that they don't like that the deal is made, and they've put some roadblocks up. I would expect less from a state level. I think federally there could be some roadblocks, that I think it's the Washington state senator or state representative has drafted up a piece of legislation that would ban any college athletic institutions from, making or striking any deals with private equity companies just simply because it's a college athletic institution. And so, there are real questions about, a public institution, a state institution, selling off a portion of its, university foundation or, an LLC, whatever you want to call it, to a private equity company. There are real questions. And so I would think that there would be roadblocks, but I would think that the University of Utah, they've followed a year and a half long of legal guidance, and I would expect the deal to go through, but you never know. We live in a crazy world, and there are always roadblocks to everything, and this is a deal that's a first of its kind, and there are some people that have major questions about it, and there are people concerned about the reputation of the University of Utah. Say it fails, there are questions about will it really work? How will it affect fans? How will it affect the student section? Does the University of Utah actually have veto powers like it says? My belief is that they would, yes, but there's a lot at play, and it'll be interesting to see what happens moving down the line. So I would expect roadblocks, but I would expect it to get passed. That's just kind of the sentiment that I've received from different people, but you never know. There's always crazy things that happen in the world, so that would be my take on it.
All right, buddy, before I set you loose, I always appreciate you guys at the Trib for doing the dirty work of journalism that most people in our space have no interest in doing. I mean, there are fans now with credentials that masquerade as journalists, but they're not. And I am curious, and you take this whatever direction you want to go, because, when Witt stepped down and then later on took the Michigan job, you can tell the magnitude of a story if you're pulled like by the newsroom or how many people across the country actually want to talk. I probably did more hits on radio stations across the country the week and a half after than I'd had maybe since the Hayward stuff when Hayward left the Jazz back in the day. And there is this permeation throughout the ecosystem here of how did this happen? What exactly went down? And maybe in time we'll get more details, and maybe in time what we know now is all there is to know. But there is part of me that believes there's a portion of this story that has not been shared with the general public as far as why ultimately Witt did step down and Morgan, of course, taking over as the succession plan. I don't want to say who's to blame. But I'll just ask you the question that was asked to me a number of different times the week and a half after the news, which was, if Kyle Whittingham wanted to keep coaching college football, why isn't he coaching college football at Utah?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good question. There's a lot that I do know, but I'm going to kind of keep a closed lip on that. I think I'll say this, when you have a head coach in waiting that's ready to coach, you have donors who are ready for that said, head coach in waiting to step up. I think college football can be cyclical sometimes, and I think, people with power, want certain things to happen sometimes. And I think, I'm not saying anybody was pushed out. I'm not saying that, a certain coach, overstayed his welcome. I'm just, the facts are, I think that, certain individuals wanted certain things to happen for multiple years, dating back to 2023 even. I think that story, I think there is portions of the story that haven't been told yet is all I will say. I think eventually those will come to light, whether or not people want to talk or not. I think the dust still hasn't settled. I think it'll take some time to settle. But like I said, it'll be interesting to see, who does talk and how and what they will talk about and all those different things. I think I wouldn't say it was an ugly breakup, but, I do think Kyle Whittingham obviously did want to come back and coach. Obviously there, the tea leaves you can read it. I mean, he's not coaching at the University of Utah. Morgan Scalley is the head coach at the University of Utah, and now he's at Michigan. I don't think Kyle would have been coaching this year if, a program like Michigan didn't come to the table. That's just my opinion. I think he probably would have taken a year off, and the plan was for him to, quote unquote, enter sort of the step down retirement phase. But then Michigan came knocking, and, a lot changed. You can go read my story I did on Kyle kind of being in this middling phase of, do I stay coaching? Do I, not? Do I, retire and just go, hang out with the grandkids all day? And, that was a real thing that he was dealing with. And so, I think think there was a lot of factors at play, and I think that there's a lot that people don't know. And I would feel irresponsible, saying stuff that I've learned off the record on the radio. That's just my personal opinion. But, there is a lot that hasn't been said, I would say. I think eventually that story will be told, or maybe it won't. Maybe it'll just be, both sides are just like, hey, we've moved on to greener pastures, and that's what people want to do. But who knows? We live in a crazy world, like I said, and when people want to talk, they want to talk, and it'll be interesting to see who does and when or how it will happen. So that would be my take on it. I know that's kind of an ominous play on it, but like I said, I don't want to out any information that I've learned off the record. It would be irresponsible for me too. So yeah.
You keep to yourself what you need to keep to yourself. This has been a 20-minute tease of what I perceive to be a massive story coming up at sltrib.com. Is that fair?
I wouldn't say anything like that. I would say that, we're always doing our jobs. We're always, I tell people all the time, I'm a news reporter that just so happens to cover sports. And, when people have questions about certain things, which in this scenario they do, it's my job to, continue to do some digging and make phone calls and all that stuff. So, I can't ever guarantee anything, but we're always working, and we're always looking, and we're always, looking to answer people's questions. That's our goal, and that's our community mission. And, that's what I strive to do every day in my work. So that's where I would leave that. So.
All right, buddy. Well, look, I know the transfer portal is still open. Congrats on your P4 offer at NC State. I'm going to set you loose to go run your college football team, and let's get you back soon. Okay.
Awesome. Sounds good, man. Thanks for having me on.
Jason Batacchio, Salt Lake Tribune, covers the University of Utah. You can experience the heart-pounding thrill of PBR. That's professional bull riding, not the beer. At the Delta Center, February 6th through the 7th. I would imagine my producer is excited about this. Are you aware of this event coming up?
Oh, it's the Salt Lake City Shootout, of course.
Of course.
I'm ready for it.
Tune in to the Sean O'Connell Show, daily at noon, for your chance to win a pair of tickets to the event. We are, about an hour away, actually less than an hour away, kickoff, the final game of the college football season. Miami and Indiana is tonight, and we'll bring in Zach Moss coming up on the other side to talk some Utes and some college football. Our very own Sean O'Connell, OC, joins us in the 5 o'clock hour. Then we'll say goodnight a little early to bring you the College Football National Championship game. You can hear it right here on your home of the Utes, ESPN 700. All right, we're going to have OC hop on during the 5 o'clock hour as you get your commute started on this Monday afternoon. Happy Monday to you. We are about, 50 minutes away from the college football national championship game in Miami between Miami and Indiana. We've been trying to get our next guest for a while because he's one of our favorites. So it's always good to welcome in former Ute, former NFL. Oh, hopefully the NFL is still part of his future. But Zach Moss on a Monday afternoon. Zach, how are you, buddy?
Good, man. How are you guys?
We're good. We're good. So give us the update. Where are you at? What have you been up to as of late? What's the latest with Zach Moss?
Not too much, man. Just continuing to rehab a little bit and just enjoying my time with my family. So not too busy, but still busy enough.
All right. Well, that's always good to hear. Do you have a rooting interest as you watch these NFL playoffs? Is it maybe like a former teammate? Is there any team that you were kind of pulling for?
Not really. I mean, I love to just see the game play at a high level. And I think we got a lot of really, really good games this past weekend by each and every team. Obviously, Buffalo being the team that drafted me and seeing that game with the controversial call and things of that nature and knowing so many of those guys still there and then seeing some of the news, obviously, with the head coach being let go. So, from that standpoint of things, watch it very, a lot from that standpoint. But, no, outside of actually picking a team, I just kind of just hope that every game is a good game and we don't get a blowout like Seattle and the Niners.
Yeah, that was tough. Since you played for Sean McDermott, I would be interested in your insight as far as what type of coach he is, what type of leader he is, and your thoughts as Buffalo has decided to move on.
Yeah, it was shocking to see them let him go, especially after the last 2 seasons, what he's been able to do with the roster that he's been able to have. He's a really, really good coach. He's a teacher of the game. He's a great leader, great man off the field, right? Which is very important in the way he, leads himself there and his family and things of that nature. So coming into the league, having a coach like that was very beneficial because he always kept everything very honest with you and things of that nature and never let the business side of things get too, crosshair a lot of the times, like how they can be with a lot of different people or whatever. So it was shocking to see him go. Obviously, I think when you saw Tomlin and Harbaugh also, let go, you knew if the Bills didn't, have the success that many people thought they would have, right, with certain teams not being in the playoffs this year, that his name would come up in question. I thought they would give him another year, just off of this season and last season, what he was able to do with that team and where they were able to get to. But I'm sure he'll land on his feet somewhere else. And I mean, he shoots up the leaderboard to be the next hot coach now in his coaching cycle. So it'll be interesting to see where he goes.
Josh Allen is catching some heat today. And, look, ultimately for me, he might be the best quarterback in pro football. We can get into some other names. When Mahomes is right, it still might be him. But as a former teammate, what sort of insight can you give us on just how he approaches these games, approaches these moments? And are you surprised that we're sitting here with another year for a guy that's that talented ending before at least even having a chance to win a Super Bowl?
I mean, to some degree, right, when the talent warrants at least making an appearance into that big game, right? Obviously, I think from that standpoint, you look at it and you can that question kind of garners attention of why hasn't he been able to make that jump and be in that big game. But I think, it's a team sport at the end of the day. I mean, he is one hell of a player from the standpoint of just being able to literally do any and everything you would want a player to do, right? But now being at the quarterback position, he's able to do each and everything, which sometimes can be his Achilles heel, which I think showed a lot in this past game with the turnover before halftime, which, again, coaching can get you out of harm's way there with only a few seconds left on the clock before halftime, down 7. You don't try to take another bite at the apple, right? Just get out of there and get out of harm's way. But, I think, like I said, it's a team's game. The draft picks that have been around him really haven't been able to give him that boost, right, that they probably were hoping when they drafted some of those guys. They haven't had the boost. Obviously, the passing game is obviously the number one thing that people look at, right, with the Keon Coleman not panning out and kind of letting Stephon Diggs walk away and now seeing Stephon Diggs have another 1,000-yard season and being in New England and being in the AFC Championship game, right? Those things you kind of have to look at and ask yourself, more questions and dig a little deeper and think about, okay, why isn't he able to get to that spot? And then look at the other quarterbacks who have been able to get to the Super Bowl, what their roster looks like around them, no matter just the talent at the quarterback position.
Yeah, and we were actually debating, and then after I ask you this, we'll get over to some Utes. Porter and I were debating what I perceive to be the two best jobs in the NFL open right now, Zach, and that would be Buffalo and Baltimore. And when you go down the rosters, because, of course, the first comparison you're going to make is Lamar and Josh. Buffalo has 0 Pro Bowlers on defense, and I don't know that they have a wide receiver one. I think they have some talent on the outside, and Dalton's awesome. But Baltimore's roster, to me, top to bottom, even though the quarterback position, the advantage probably goes to Buffalo, I think Baltimore's probably the better roster, top to bottom. Which job do you think on the market is better right now, Baltimore or Buffalo, and why?
Well, definitely Buffalo. Definitely Baltimore. Baltimore, like I said, outside of the quarterback position, it's personal preference on which guy you like to have running your offense or whatever. But, once you go from that spot and you just keep picking, position by position, I think obviously many people would think that the Baltimore job is definitely more intriguing from the talent pool that they're going to have. Yeah, if I'm a head coach or a head coach that's, in waiting or something like that, then yeah, I would definitely, try to do everything to land in Baltimore, even though the Buffalo job is really, really good, but both of those jobs are going to come with a lot of expectations just because who's at the helm.
All right, let's move over to some college ball. Do you have a thought on what we could see tonight before we talk Utes? It's the final game of the college football season. Indiana has been as close to perfect as you can be. Kirk Cignetti with a 2-year turnaround that's been a masterclass. And obviously, the Miami football program, Zach. And when I was growing up, Miami football was not just awesome. They were the coolest program around. So it's cool to see them back on this big stage. It's in your home state of Florida. Indiana's a 7.5-point favorite. How do you think it goes down tonight?
Yeah, it's going to be a really good game. I think it's going to be a little bit boring when you think about how long it's taken this game to get back, for this game to come. It's been, at least 10 days, almost 2 weeks, something like that. So they haven't played ball in quite a bit, and both teams are run dominant, and that's the way they're going to try to operate. Both quarterbacks are pretty good, but nothing where they're, super, super talented, where it's going to be a pass-heavy game. So it's going to be a lot of tough defense, a lot of run game. I think Indiana is going to figure out a way to win this game. I think, Miami's a really, really good team. And the run that they've had this year is remarkable because, so many people didn't think they would get in, right? So we could imagine that looking back at it now. But I think Indiana takes it just because their run game is really, really good. They have, I think, a little bit better talent on the outside once that play-action game gets to running. But the battle will be won between the trenches. Whichever O-line and D-line is going to play at a higher level consistently throughout that game is going to, dictate how it goes. So I'm excited to watch it and see how it goes, but I think Indiana pulls it out. I don't see any blowouts. I think Indiana could figure out a way to get to a 10-point win.
As a Florida kid, did you grow up as a Miami fan? Because I'm older than you, because I go back to like those Miami teams in the 90s and moving, through the early 2000s, 2001, their 5th national championship. Did you grow up a fan of Miami? Did you grow up a fan of Florida State? When you were coming up, who was your college football team?
Well, I was a late bloomer in football, so I didn't really pay attention to football too much. I liked basketball a lot more growing up. So college football was, obviously in my family, but I never really paid a great deal of attention to it. Obviously, I was committed to the University of Miami at one point as well during my high school time. So, like you said, it's really good to see them get back to this game and kind of reestablish themselves as who they've been and things of that nature. So, I mean, like I said, I don't think it's going to be a cakewalk for Indiana. I think Miami obviously is going to have the home field advantage, and that's going to play such a huge role in them being able to steal this game, because a lot of people do believe Miami could win. I can see it going both ways, but, I'll go ahead and lean towards Indiana.
All right, Zach, a few minutes left here. Let's move over to your alma mater. I'm not sure if you've heard, but your former head coach has a new team, as Kyle Whittingham is now the head coach of Michigan. When I say that sentence to you, the head coach of Michigan football is Kyle Whittingham, even weeks later, what goes through your mind?
It's still shocking, for sure. The fact that he's not here, which is I'm pretty sure is unfathomable to a lot of people, is still baffling to myself. But, I think he landed in a really good situation, knowing how things transpired, his tenure here coming to an end and things of that nature, moving on from that. So excited to, be able to watch what he can do with that team. And, it's going to be a lot of eyes on him for sure, for a lot of different reasons.
All right, I wanted to get your take as an alum. The reality of college football right now is Utah football a year ago pillaged New Mexico staff. They took their offensive coordinator, their quarterback, their running back, the wide receiver, etc., and it worked out for Utah. Well, as Coach Witt walked out the door, he brought 7 coaches with him. He brought 5 players with him, and Celeste Moa, the number 1 recruit in the state of Utah, flipped from Utah to Michigan. This is how the sport works. And, anybody who's been paying attention understands that. But what would you say to the portion of our community that feels, that as a result of Kyle taking players and coaches, he has somehow diminished his accomplishments here in 21 years as the head coach?
Yeah, I mean, excuse my language to some degree, right? But it's BS. It's a really bad thing to see. So many people, feel the way they feel, which is, always right. You can feel the way however you decide to feel, but you hate to see it just because someone who's built this program to an entirely different stratosphere, to where people actually outside of the state want to come here and do different things in the program. Over 21 years, there, in my eyes, should be nothing but, grace and gratitude for a guy who's dedicated a lot of his time and his life to this program. Like I said, it's really bad to see that, but again, it's also part of the game. Obviously, fortunately, 21 years of his coaching career being here in Utah, the fans have never had to see a coach leave, right, for 21 years. So now when it happens, you can understand the emotions and things of that nature, why all those things kind of flare up. And he's just doing what every coach that leaves one program or team in the NFL, right, does. Even in basketball, it doesn't matter the sport. When a coach leaves, they have their staff that they like. They have players that they like. I've been on both sides of that, where, a new coach comes in and you kind of get pushed down the line a little bit because they're more familiar with these people that they're bringing from their other program and things of that nature. So, again, it's very, very normal. But, again, for 21 years, Utah fans have been, blessed and lucky to have a guy who's been as consistent as you can possibly hope in a profession that usually doesn't allow a lot of consistency, as you can see, right? Usually coaches have a real quick shelf life to some degree. So, hopefully that time is behind us now and people kind of got the most out of the way and we can turn towards the Scally era and, put all our energy and focus onto what this football team is going to be able to do starting in spring.
And that's where I wanted to go next. And I wondered as an alum, here's how I'll phrase the question. What do you think will be different when it comes to Morgan taking over Utah football? And what do you hope is different now that Morgan is in charge?
I think the main thing, obviously a lot of things will stay the same because why wouldn't they? When you've seen someone and he's been in the program, Coach Scally, for pretty much the entire time as well, right? That Coach Witt was there. So he's going to take a lot of things that worked really well that has helped build this program to where it is now. And he's going to also put his own flavor on things. So I'm interested in seeing how he does that. And from just a few social media posts that I've seen, guys look like they're having a little bit different type of fun. Not that they didn't have fun before, right? Even when I was there with Coach Witt, we had fun, but it was a different type of fun. So it looks a little different right now, and I'm excited to get around the team in the spring and kind of see, just with my own eyes, kind of how that looks and feels and things of that nature. But what was the other part of that question? Sorry.
So as far as like what you hope might be different, there's a lot of conversation about since Morgan is just a Utah man and played here at Utah and look, he's just younger as well. So he's like maybe a little bit more friendly when it comes to Ute alums. I mean, is there anything in that space you hope looks a little different?
Yeah, and I've been vocal about that before. But yeah, hopefully, the alumni thing is something that obviously now that I'm not playing football anymore right now, I've been able to be here in Utah this whole past season and, be around the team and kind of see how hard it is for the alumni just to be able to, come to the games, feel comfortable and feel like, this is part of your home. And there's so many guys that live here that, one, are from here, obviously, and then obviously that just play here and might have stayed here. And it's very hard to some degree as an alumni to feel a part of this team. So I'll be very interested to see how Coach Scally kind of blends those two things, knowing that that is an issue to some degree, right? And that goes to both, obviously, administration, and then it comes down to the football side of things as well, and understanding that the alumni are a very important part of the school. I know when I was getting recruited to go to the University of Miami, right, the alumni was always around. You can always see alumni players at the school, at practices, right, at games. But, the main thing was really at practices when you would go as a recruit from high school and just go to a visit. You can see the guys that you might have, wanted to play like or have success like or just be in their shoes or something of that nature, right? So, I think that's something that has been lacking from the program for sure. That's definitely been brought to my attention and things that I've experienced and saw in just this past year. So hopefully, administration and the coaching staff on the football side of things understand that. And I think Coach Scally will, obviously being a Utah man, playing in that uniform and things of that nature and being a lot younger and having so many players, right, that he's played with are going to want to come and support him at the same time as well. I think those things will get fixed, right? When, how, that'll only be answered with time. But, hopefully for all the alumni, we just want to have a part in the team and just feeling like home where you can come back and not feel like you're different to some degree.
Good stuff, Zach. I always appreciate your insight. Glad you're doing well. Enjoy the game tonight. We'll get you back on soon, okay?
Yes, sir, my man. Appreciate it.
All right, Zach Moss, one of the best, really, not just running backs in Utah history, one of the best football players in Utah history, period. Porter and I often talk about that 2019 team where Zach was unstoppable. I had forgotten that he committed to Miami out of high school, but Florida kid, it makes sense. He was one of the best high school running backs in that state for a number of different years. All right. We will catch a break. We are, well, let's see, about 30 minutes away from the beginning of our coverage officially for the college football championship, the CFP championship game tonight between Indiana and Miami. It looks like the scenes on TV look like a lot of fun. So we'll bring in Sean coming up. Sean O'Connell will stop by, the host of our midday show. We'll give you a preview of tonight's game. Then we'll say goodnight just before 5:30, hand it over to coverage of the college football national championship game. You can hear right here on your home of the Utes, ESPN 700. 41 minutes, 44 seconds away from kickoff tonight in Miami. It is the College Football National Championship between Miami and Indiana. Final game of the college football season. College football says goodbye as far as games go, but it is a sport that now you cover kind of wall to wall all year long. So stay tuned. We're going to say goodnight prior to 5:30 to bring you our official pregame coverage of the game, and then it'll be kickoff close to 6 o'clock. And instead of our usual drive at 5, we're going to preview tonight's game and then bounce around wherever you want to go with the host of the Sean O'Connell Show. And if you're not listening to the Sean O'Connell Show on this station 11 to 2, you are missing out on the Monday afternoon. Hello, Sean. Happy Monday, young man. How are you?
I'm great, Spence. How are you?
I miss you. It's been, a few hours, and so I just feel like we needed to have you back on.
I'm glad. I'm glad you called because I was starting to feel weird when it hadn't been long enough, It's not good.
I need an update because when we last spoke, you said you might be eating a microwave dinner, watching tonight's festivities on your own. Is that how it's unfolded?
Well, I haven't microwaved my dinner yet, but that is exactly how it's going to go.
What's on the docket? Are you what's the preferred microwave dinner of Sean O'Connell?
Well, I'm a leftovers guy, all right?
Nice.
I always make extra when we're having a regular meal, knowing that I'm going to want to reheat that for lunches and dinners. So we have a nice little, probably a quarter of a pan of lasagna left over.
Lovely.
And I'll probably eat the whole thing, Spence.
Atta guy, as you should. All right, before we get to the actual game, let's kind of revisit topically some things we discussed during Crosstalk. And if you miss it, Sean and I do Crosstalk every day to end his show and begin mine. I don't know what the ratings are going to look like for this game. Only time will tell. But we had a couple of guests on throughout the course of the show today, and it appears that it's a unanimous opinion that just going head-to-head against the NFL, and yes, there's no NFL game tonight, is probably something this sport should look to avoid moving forward. The Sean O'Connell take on the college football calendar, even though we discussed it earlier, sounds like what?
Well, I think that two things can be true. I think you can have a Monday night space for this college football national championship and hope that it's enough space after the divisional round of NFL playoffs where people can dial back in and say, all right, let's cap off this season and see what's next. And there's a lot of draft interest in this particular game. But, yeah, I mean, you should always let the NFL be the lion that eats first and then take what's left over. And I think that we have a hard time admitting that with all of our sports. If it's a better idea for college football to stay clear of the NFL calendar, that would mean saying, look, NFL, we want to finish our season January 1st, like Dan Lanning suggested for us, but you've got to do us the favor of not occupying December Saturdays with, some playoff games, with wild card weekend and things like that. And I think if you were able to put together a decent game plan there where the NFL – it doesn't have to capitulate any super valuable real estate for them, but you say, let us just have all of December to play college football playoff rounds, and then you guys can have every Saturday, Sunday, Monday you want after that. I think it would be the best thing to serve all the fans, and it would transition better to the NBA season as well. After Christmas is when you really have to start paying attention. You could start the dang NBA season at Christmas and I'd be fine. But these leagues are not collaborative enough because there's always positioning, elbowing, trying to get your rating. Well, doing that against the NFL, I think the point you're making is probably not the best idea.
All right. Macro thoughts on the landscape of college football this year. Arch Manning was the favorite to win the Heisman, never came close. Clemson started the year preseason number 4, Penn State preseason number 2. I mean, so many of the things that we thought were going to happen didn't even come close. Indiana begins the season as the losingest major program in the history of college football. Texas Tech hadn't won more than 8 games in a season since 2009. So many of the things that we thought were going to happen did not happen, and so many of the things that we had no idea would manifest did. When you look back on your expectations to start the college football season, as we sit here at the end of the college football season, what caught you the most off guard?
Well, I think to start with the local angle, I think that none of us thought Utah's coaching situation would look like it does right this second. I think a lot of us felt that Morgan Scalley would be the head coach at this point. I certainly thought that and talked that way all season long. But I would have assumed that that meant Kyle Whittingham was retired and done and maybe in some kind of golden parachute advisory position for Utah athletics. So that's the biggest thing that didn't work out the way that I thought it would. I thought Texas Tech was going to be good. I didn't think that this mercenary program would work as well as it did. I thought Indiana was going to be good. I didn't think Indiana was going to be on the precipice of completing the best turnaround in sports history and maybe the best individual season in the history of NCAA football. They have, you can build a case if they win the national championship tonight. They're beating teams by 40-plus points a game. I mean, it's absolutely insane. I didn't think BYU was going to be as good as they were with an unknown commodity at the quarterback position, and Bear Bachmeier obviously stepped in and did a really, really good job there. And, you know, I thought that Ohio State was going to be darn near unbeatable this year. And at times they looked that way, but ultimately they're not in the Final Four. They're not certainly in this national championship game. So, yeah, my expectations were a lot different than the reality, which is usually the case.
And that's what makes it, so fun, because I always talk about this. My advice to my listeners is do not bet on sports, and particularly college football, because it's just impossible to predict. All right, let's move over now, and let's do this one at a time. So let's start with the Miami side of things. Okay, so, a couple of years ago, these rich boosters pushed Manny Diaz out. They bring in Mario Cristobal, who we got to know as the head coach of Oregon. He was on the 89 and 91 national championship teams. He was featured in that awesome documentary, The U. But he was 12-13 in his first two seasons. His average SP plus was 49.5. He was building a decent defense, and, you could kind of see some things being built in the image of who he is. A lot of clock mismanagement plagued them. They had the number one pick in the draft, Cam Ward, but the defense was collapsing last year. They start 9-0. They lose 3 of their last 4. And then they start the season off ranked number 10. And, throughout the course of the year, I think Miami was a team that certain people looked at with a weak ACC, thinking, okay, they're clearly the class of that conference. But not many people had them here to start the year, Sean. Your thoughts on this project by Mario Cristobal that has led them to the precipice of a national championship?
Yeah, I was not a believer in Miami, and I probably still am not an ultimate believer in Miami, but you have to give Coach Cristobal and his staff a lot of credit for restoring Miami football to what Miami football really should be, right? I mean, they're in perhaps the most fertile recruiting ground for skill position players, for speed, that you can find in all of college football, and their roster actually looks like that again. They went out and they got the support of a bunch of big-time boosters to secure them an experienced quarterback who already had championship-level success at another school. They started to play the game in a really, really intelligent way. Whether you like the system that allows them to do what they've done, they've approached it from a really smart perspective. They've got a future first-round draft pick playing that offensive tackle position in the Mount Goa kid. It's like you said, it's exactly what Mario Cristobal wanted to do at Oregon, had the resources to do at Oregon, but I don't think had the regional connections and the maybe cultural know-how to do it at Oregon the same way he does at a place where he's from and he's played. So I think he's a much better fit at Miami, and credit to the school, to the university, to the boosters, to even the fan base for knowing that it was going to take a little bit of time, or even maybe not knowing it was going to take a little bit of time, but accepting the fact when it started to take a little bit of time that it was still going to be okay. And now they've got a shot to win the Natty, and that fan base and that booster base and that alumni base is completely re-energized. We're going to see it on the television broadcast tonight, Spence, and we've been joking about it all week. I mean, there are dozens of gold jackets that are Hurricane alum, and they're all going to be there, and they're all going to be on the sideline. And Michael Irvin's been on the sideline for any game, and they're all going to be freaking out. And that energizes this program and deploys the resources of this program in a way that can really make this sustainable for Mario Cristobal.
The Kirk Cignetti story, there will be a movie made about this. I mean, awe-inspiring run, almost the likes of which we've never seen. They beat Ohio State in the Big Ten championship game. They smoked Alabama in the Rose Bowl and just curb stomped Oregon. A couple of years ago, Indiana 6-1 to start the 2020 season during COVID. And then they move on from Tom Allen. They bring in Cignetti, who, of course, has been able to build some smaller schools in the FCS, Elon, and then the FBS, of course, James Madison. And look, I'm sure they were confident that he could help them turn around, but this has been remarkable. And we had Fernando Mendoza out in our footprint for a while, and I'll just speak for myself. I think you could see some arm talent, but I never looked at him and thought, okay, potentially winning a Heisman Trophy. This is a team that is 15-0, and they were preseason ranked number 20. It was a 3,000-1 shot that they would win the national championship. Same question: what stands out most to you about how Kirk Cignetti has done this?
Well, he's done it with players that he trusts, players that he knows. He is not the guy who gets all starry-eyed over the freak measurables and the athleticism and the speed. He loves it, but not the same way that all these other coaches do. He said it multiple times, and there's probably going to be a book about it. Production over potential. He brought a bunch of JMU guys with him. He's not enamored with 4 and 5 stars. He's enamored with people that he knows can play football and that are going to do it the right way. It's a culture program, the same way that Utah likes to be, that BYU's trying to be. This is a guy who's doing it the way that he knows he will be successful, and that's when you start paying attention as he gets more and more famous. That's how he's done his whole career. He took downgrade jobs on his path to being the Indiana head coach so that he could be the guy that could control the outcomes and he could live and die by his own sword. And that right now is really going his way. He's identified a bunch of talent that other teams appreciated but probably didn't deploy to the maximum ability. It's the same thing we've loved about Utah football for years, where you recruit some wide receiver and he becomes a defensive end, or you've got a running back you realize would be better suited as a linebacker or something like that. That's what Kurt Cignetti has done with a bunch of these guys. And he's taken a former two-star recruit who's from the Miami Hurricanes' backyard to be the Heisman Trophy winner, a transfer out of Cal, and now a heavy favorite in a national championship game because he knows that kid is addicted to football. He knows he's a culture guy. He knows that he loves his teammates, that he loves study, and that he can anticipate what a defense is going to do. Far more important than his arm talent, far more important than any of his physical attributes. He appreciates Fernando Mendoza's brain, and that's why he got him to come to Indiana, and it's worked out swimmingly so far.
All right. Is there a spot where you see Indiana as vulnerable? Because I don't know that I see it. With Miami, their defensive front is great. Bain and Mesidor, 32 tackles for a loss, 19 run stops, 19 sacks, 123 pressures, 5 forced fumbles, a pick and 2 breakups in the CFP, and the Justin Scott kid, who's their defensive tackle, is also an NFL player. But Indiana's offensive line, left to right, Carter Smith, Drew Evans, Pat Coogan, Bray Lynch, and Khalil Benson have combined for 171 career starts, 34 starts per player. If there's one area that Miami excels, that is their defensive front, but it feels like Indiana's going to be able to kind of absorb that. If you're Mario Cristobal, you're watching the tape, what do you see that you might be able to exploit?
Well, it's strength versus strength, so I don't know if you're able to exploit. We're talking about an undefeated, dominant Indiana team, so there's obviously not a lot of low-hanging fruit in the ability to defeat them. I think that you've got to try and put a bunch of points on the board because Indiana's going to be able to. You probably would be best served, honestly, Spence, running a completely different defensive look. You've had 2 weeks to prepare. You throw something together, you throw something out there that you haven't put on tape yet this year, that might be your best hope in order to confuse this Indiana offensive line and to confuse Fernando Mendoza, because one thing, Indiana's not as talented as Oregon is, right? I don't think there's anyone in college football that will tell you that they are. They dominated Oregon both games, and especially the second game, the college football playoff game, because that offense knew exactly what Oregon was going to do in every situation. And not just the quarterback, the wide receivers knew exactly where to run into the soft spots in the zones. The running backs knew exactly where the cutback lanes were going to be. These guys are the master tacticians all the way down the roster. So if you're Miami and you're trying to slow that down a little bit, you have to give them looks that they haven't seen from you. They're going to do all your tape study. They're going to find your tendencies. That's what Kurt Cignetti is best at. So if you want to have some hope of disrupting Fernando Mendoza, of causing this offensive line troubles and getting there and getting some tackles for loss, some sacks, some meaningful turnovers potentially with some havoc plays, you probably need to run something that nobody else has or that you certainly haven't yet. And that's obviously not a normal game plan. So I'm really curious to see what defensively, especially that D-line, Jason Taylor is their coach, right? The Hall of Famer, the NFL Hall of Famer, the Miami Dolphins great. Jason Taylor is their coach. If he can't figure out something to mess up this Indiana offensive line, who can?
Well said, Sean. Before I say you lose, some late money has come in towards Miami. Indiana, as we sit here, 7.5-point favorite, over under 46.5. Give me a pick. How do you think it goes down?
I think Indiana is going to complete one of the greatest seasons in the history of college football. I think the late money is trying to take advantage of some bargain buys and hope for an upset. I don't know how many people actually believe in it because, I mean, Indiana gives you no reason. Number 2 scoring offense in the country, number 2 scoring defense in the country. Miami is 30th and 5th in those same categories. Indiana right now is the best team in college football. If they play like we know they're capable of playing, this game probably won't be close. I'm taking Indiana and the over based on those numbers you gave me.
All right, buddy. We'll enjoy the lasagna, enjoy the game, and we'll chat tomorrow. Thank you, Sean.
All right, thanks for having me.
Sean O'Connell, host of the Sean O'Connell Show, 11 to 2 on our station. You can hear him every day. Text to win a 4-pack of tickets to an advanced screening of Shelter, starring Jason Statham on Tuesday, January the 27th at Megaplex Valley Fair Mall. More details at ESPN700sports.com. I did not know malls were still a thing. All right, Porter, it's time to get out of here. We'll catch a break. And coming up next, it's time for the College Football National Championship. What comes our way on a Tuesday edition of The Drive?
We'll, of course, recap that college football title. Dave Bartu, the College Football Matrix. Ted Robinson stops by the program. We'll check in on both of our Utes and our guys in blue. Bill Riley stops by, the voice of the Utes, and our friend Spencer Linton to finish off the show. So we're going all over the map, but probably a whole bunch of college football on a Tuesday.
Love it. That'll be a great Tuesday show. We will say goodnight. Special thank you today to Jake Crane, Thor Nystrom, Jason Batakiao, Zach Moss, and Sean O'Connell. A lot of good stuff today. If you missed any of it, go to the website. It's ESPN700sports.com. Download our mobile app and take us on the go. That ESPN 700 app is available in the App Store and the Google Play Store. And then finally, for what we do in our space, usually 4 hours, but 3.5 today, go to our podcast page and become a supporter and a subscriber. Follow along, rate, review, say nice things in the comments, and you give us all the stars. It helps. He's Porter. I'm Spence saying goodnight. Coming up next, the final game of the college football season for all the marbles. It's Indiana and it's Miami. We'll talk to you tomorrow right here on your home of the Utes, ESPN.